Good evening. Welcome to the Ashland Planning Board meeting of Thursday, May 28th, 2020. We are meeting online under the governor's exception to the open meeting law due to the state of emergency. We are currently being recorded and broadcast and streamed by WACA Cable Access, and we thank them for that. On our agenda for tonight, we have a fairly full meeting. First, we have a continued public hearing on 5 Homer Avenue. This is the old Rams Farmer Market or the Mina Market site where a dentist is looking at locating an office. At 7:45, we have a discussion of a proposed tree protection bylaw. And at 8 o'clock, we have a continued public hearing on 81 West Union Street. This is the next phase of construction next to the big storage building next to the middle school. We also have a continued public hearing on a zoning article concerning animal kennels and clinics that I think will be a fairly, I think we're closing that out. There was going to be a discussion on the current status of construction on 128 Main Street. There have been concerns with the what's actually being built not matching exactly what we were told they were going to build. So we're going to talk about that. Some discussions about the downtown zoning grant, Metro West Regional Collaborative, minutes and administrative matters. So that's what we have for tonight. Let's start with 5 Homer Avenue. If the applicant could kick us off and remind us where we are on that, and then we can move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. When we last met, we had a very good and full discussion of the issues, and we continued to allow the applicant to reappear before the Design Review Committee to resolve some open issues. That meeting went forward last Thursday evening, and my understanding is that the applicant himself and the board went over the outstanding issues pertaining to the cosmetic appearance issues on the building and the inability to place a dumpster, and also whether or not something could be done particularly about the windows, which although they're really on the interior, could be lightened somewhat to make a more pleasing aesthetic experience. My understanding is they had a concurrence of opinion, and I was made aware today by Peter of their recommendations. So I think procedurally, they have now complied with the requirements so that you have the ability to act. Nothing else has really occurred other than that. I was provided with an advance copy by Peter of the draft decision, which I appreciated very much. Had one minor comment only, and believe that the decision certainly incorporates the statutory requirements under the bylaw. And beyond that, I'm prepared to answer any other questions that the board may have, either myself or Dr. Shaw.
Okay. Looking at the Design Review Committee comments, they did ask for window boxes for planters. Do you have a response to that?
I think the discussion that emanated there was that we would put in a window box to the extent that we could, if we can accommodate it, in the area that was essentially between the edge of the building and didn't intrude in the right of way. Looking at the discussion from the first meeting, which is actually under the second meeting in the text of the minutes, I don't think they were quite accurate in terms of the amount of space. Based upon the plot plan, we think the space is less than that. But Dr. Shaw, to the extent that he can, will try to locate a window box.
Okay. Comments from the board?
I really don't think the window boxes are necessary. That's my opinion. Sometimes they can end up being worse looking than when they start.
Yeah, I think I'm more concerned, not concerned, but want to make sure the signage is a little hard to see on the diagram, which it obviously always is, but that the signage and lighting is of high quality. I agree with the window boxes, especially along Main Street itself. That is very narrow. Along the other road there, what is it? Homer. It's Homer. It's wider, and so there's maybe more opportunity. But I agree, unless they're maintained, you know, they look terrible. So I don't. So I have some reservations about that as well. I'm a little bit more wondering about the things that are permanently attached to the building, and you know, and how well the building looks just as it's, you know, itself. So.
I would just, are you done, Tricia?
Yes, yes.
I would just reiterate what they said, and I agree that like the window boxes, when they're really nice, they're amazing. But I would say more often than not, the ones I see are not amazing. So it's not a big concern of mine. And you know, at the end of the day, if it's not going to be like eye popping, I'd rather Dr. Shah focus on his patients than gardening.
Oh, come on. Who the fuck said that?
Kathy, we just heard that. You need to go on mute.
Oh, sorry.
It was me, Phil Williams.
I do have a comment.
Can you hold that for just a moment? Joe, do you have any comments this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think window boxes would be nice. I think I agree with the comments previously. When they're done well, they look fantastic. When they're not a focus, they don't necessarily add. They probably detract. So, you know, I would be willing to take Dr. Shah's, you know, best faced effort here that, you know, he will try to beautify it and make it be a nice part of downtown. Like I'm willing to take him at his word on that, and just ask him to do whatever he can do. You know, presuming we move forward here with this, I guess I'm willing to kind of go there.
My thought is, it wouldn't hurt to put in if we're not going to require the window boxes, we could still put in the decision, the authorization to put in window boxes, so that if he decides he wants to do it, that's what's going to make it look nice, and that he would be authorized to do that without having to come back for a site plan modification, because that's just a pain.
Yeah.
But would he need to do that for window boxes with flowers in it, Preston?
I don't know, but if we put it in there, then there's no question. So it's always good to put as much in as we can.
There's zero space between the building and the public way, correct? Like the edge of the building is
The public way, pretty much.
right. There's not like
essentially, yes.
Correct. Yeah. And just to add in, you do need 4 feet of clearance for compliance for passage, I would say. And so,
Snow blowing.
Excuse me?
For snow blowing and such?
No, ADA compliance.
Wheelchairs.
Okay. Wheelchairs. And so we cannot intrude on that space. And so that's my biggest concern, is the ADA compliance regulations that we have to kind of make sure that we're holding above all elements of our conversation. Window boxes or no window boxes.
And we don't know, with a streetscape redesign coming, and that is part of downtown redesign, is it not?
The streetscape?
Yes, that piece of the streetscape.
Yeah.
Yes, the intersection of Main and Homer will be part of the project.
So maybe we put presuming we can get the appropriate clearance for ADA after, you know, if Dr. Shaw can take a look at it at that point in time and see if it's more feasible as a result of the streetscape.
Yeah, I agree with Preston. We give them the option to not have to come back. Be up to him.
Also, if they put it in as something they choose to do, there's more motivation to keep it nice.
Mr. Chairman, when I heard you use the word authorization, it triggered my memory to our last hearing when you used that same reasoning to talk about solar. I have
Yes,
the decision on my screen, and I did not see a provision for the solar in it.
I was just about to say the exact same thing.
That's something, a mistake on my end, and I can add that to the decision.
All right,
Yeah,
so
my other thought with plantings is it's likely once we get the streetscape redesign in, there may be some planting boxes that are put in a number of places with a consistent design throughout the downtown, and maybe the Ashland Garden Club might end up being responsible for them, or someone else who does. I know they do a fantastic job with another number of locations in town.
Yeah, the last word I had though at the Ashland Garden Club that they were already, you know, before coronavirus, they were already short-staffed, you know, for the volunteer work that they do. So I would not look to put anything else on their plate and depend on that at all. So
That's a good point.
they already do a lot of work. So,
They do amazing stuff for this town.
yeah.
So if anybody from the Garden Club is listening, thank you. With that, I'd like to open it up for public comment.
and this is just on the planter box issue, right?
Or potentially anything on 5 Homer. I think.
I have an issue with some of the wording
Okay.
on the parking. It says, I gotta bring it up, but it says, I believe it says that the occupant is going to instruct people to park in a certain parking lot. I hesitate to, I mean, we rely on public parking down there. It's all shared with everybody. To specify a certain point in our decision where they kind of have to park, I would say that they would, if they're going to direct people to parking, direct them to public parking rather than a specific public parking. Because then if there's an issue later and that parking lot's full and they've instructed people to park there, I don't know. I think since the downtown relies on all public parking and that's for all the businesses, that if we weren't so specific, and if he wants to tell them that's the good place to park, but really they're allowed to park in any public spots downtown, I think we should allow them. We shouldn't, almost sounds like we're telling them to park in a certain spot. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. And
they need to make sure that they tell people don't park on private property, because that's an issue that, you know, that anybody should do anyway. But to specify them, to put in the decision, it says they're going to instruct them to park in a certain parking lot, public lot. I don't think, if we just said if they're going to do it, if they would specify to make sure that somehow make sure that the people are parking only in public spots, any public spots downtown.
And it should also say not in private parking that the applicant has not made arrangements for with the owner.
Right. This is Mr. Efron. We're still working on those, and so I would agree that to the extent you mention a restriction as to private parking, you put in that caveat that, you know, absent a demonstrated contractual arrangement with such owner to allow parking on whatever terms and conditions. I would suggest, and I read this condition very carefully today, and I can't tell you I'm totally in favor of it, because the downtown district really suggests there is not a parking requirement. But I think you're trying to be careful with it, and so long as you're careful with it, it's something that we're not going to object to.
Yeah, I just didn't want to put in there that we're specifying they can, almost sounds like they can only park in one spot downtown, because they're allowed to park anywhere on public. Down by the post office, they can park if there's spots open in front of the post office. You know, on Homer, there's a few. There's in front of Stones. So if those are open and it's more convenient, especially in weather situations and stuff, to park closer, you know, I would just say public parking rather than a certain public parking.
Yeah, I agree. Public parking is public parking, you know, and it's open to anyone and their customers.
And if they want to encourage people to park over at the bank over there in that main parking lot, that's fine with them. But I don't think we should put in our decision that's kind of like that they need to park a certain thing.
The first part where it says it was presented in the public hearing by the applicant, all employees and patients will be directed and required to park in the Front Street municipal parking lot. That's a statement of what was presented in the hearing, and that is accurate. Yeah. We should then clarify that our say therefore or something like that the applicant shall direct all employees and customers to avoid private parking for which no contractual arrangement has been obtained.
Yeah, I can make those changes. I've taken all those notes down, so that's not an issue. So we're really just going to focus on public parking instead of the how I first drafted it.
Yeah. Exactly. The saying that the applicant presented that they would tell their employees and patients to park in that lot, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what the requirement is.
Yeah.
The requirement is just that they park in
public,
public legal public parking, or and avoid private parking for which no contractual arrangement has been obtained.
And then since there doesn't seem to be any map of public parking, they'll have to figure that out.
Well, public parking is, every driver is supposed to be able to figure that out.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they get tickets.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments on this?
I just have one question for the planner. Peter, I did not get a revised document after we communicated, but did you address that issue I had about the non-applicability of recording of plans?
Yeah, no, I made a note of that, and I was waiting to make final corrections, Jerry. So,
okay, that's fine.
Just a note to the planning board. Obviously, I used some fairly boilerplate language to come up with the conditions, and because it's site plan approval, one of the conditions, it states that all plans shall be recorded, and in this case, the decision shall be recorded, not the plan shall be recorded. So Jerry and I, Attorney Efron and I already talked about that issue. Blunder, I would say.
All right. I also see in the document that under findings, there's F, and then in red, you have window tinting.
Yeah, that was an issue that came up, and I know it was a leftover issue from the design from the last meeting and went to the design review board. However, at the design review board, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, looking at the final recommendations, they recommend the frosting on the windows, and so which will allow people to see not really see into the building, but the patients will be able to see out of the windows, and there's not a tint, which would, be, similar to a tattoo shop, or, and so I think that's the biggest thing is the windows will be frosted, and they will not be tinted with, black window tint. And so the frosted windows will fit into the streetscape, and it will be, acceptable, being on such a predominant corner in town. Dr. Shaw, do you have any input on that? I see you
Yeah,
nodding.
it was with my understanding that I presented a different design in which instead of making the windows darker, it actually brightens it up a little bit, but then it will actually blur out the actual whatever is inside. So nobody from the outside can see in, and you still get all the light transparency. And they recommended I go with either 20 or 30%. So that was the discussion from last week.
Yep, and so that's something that I'm going to add in and remove that window tinting, Preston.
Okay, will that be added as a condition then?
I think it will be mostly added as a finding. I can add it as in the conditions if appropriate, or if needed, I would say. But I believe there's a consensus from the applicant and the attorney that and please correct me if I'm wrong, a consensus from the planning board that that's an appropriate measure for this project.
Yeah, the applicant concurs with that. Yes.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Preston?
Yes?
So it's Kathy Rooney, and I'm speaking as an individual, not as a committee member right now. I think that we have lots of rules and regulations about the built environment, and if it's not kept up to snuff and not maintained, then some inspector or another comes down to a building manager or owner or a business, and they say, you have to do XYZ or you're going to start getting fined, or you're endangering the public or whatever. So the same is true for plantings and for window boxes, and I couldn't agree more that if they're done badly, they look terrible, but it's not hard to do them well, and it's not hard to maintain them. And I think as if somebody suggested at a previous meeting that they get used as ashtrays, if that starts happening, that perhaps the Board of Health can get involved and they can start talking to all the people who sell cigarettes in town, and they can get signs posted that say dispose of your cigarettes properly. I mean, my street's an ashtray. It doesn't mean that it's not going to still be there and not get used. That's an education thing. But I think that because they might look terrible is not a reason to not require them. And I also think that it's great that we're going to do stuff downtown, but I'm pretty sure that this entire COVID virus thing is throwing public funding for all kinds of stuff into disarray right now. So that project might get delayed for years, and asking business owners who are coming into town to do their part to help beautify downtown, and it's not a lot of money compared to all the other money this man is spending. It'll make his business look better. It'll make it look fresh and bright, and it'll help make our downtown look bright. So I don't see the problem with asking about window boxes, and I'm asking for things like that because it will make our downtown look better in whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, on the window boxes, I agree with what others have said. There's really no way on the Main Street side. It's only on the Homer Street side, and it'd only be on probably the windows to the west of the entrance, because the sidewalk starts getting narrower there as the parking gets added.
It's actually 11 feet wide at the entrance, and until you get to the first crosswalk to the right of the entrance, if you're facing the entrance, that goes down to 8 feet. So I'm not suggesting they go on the Main Street side at all, because it's way too narrow over there. It's 4.5 feet wide at best. But on the Homer Avenue side, up until you get to that utility pole in the corner, you could have window boxes there. And it's
Well-
definitely wide enough to do it.
Unfortunately, based on the plot plan, that's simply not the case. And the building is right on the property line except for one small jog. And it's going to be very difficult to get more than one box in there. And we do not want the liability attached, frankly, for something that is not integral to the use of the property to put a window box. We'll try to make a best effort, but we would be resistant to a mandatory window box condition. And potentially would not accept it. And frankly, although I understand the comments about beautification, I think frankly it's going a little too far for this particular property, which has been in its configuration after the town redid the whole intersection and did the taking right up against this building. And to put this particular building into a mandatory requirement that may pose liability issues and other issues, it does not seem to me to be productive when we're here only because we've triggered site plan review for a change of use. And I would object to it.
And also, if you put window boxes on one side of the building and not on the other, that's kind of out of balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually just pulled this up on Google Street View, and so as you're facing the door, the window to the left, the sidewalk starts getting narrow there, so you wouldn't want to do that. The window to the right, the sidewalk is nice and wide. It looks like it would fit just fine. The next window to the right of that, the sidewalk is still nice and wide, but there is a big post right in the middle of the sidewalk for the traffic light. So, the pedestrian flow pushes closer to the building and you don't really have the full width of the sidewalk there. So it starts getting congested. And when you have something sticking out from a window, if it's not well laid out, you'll have somebody inattentive walking into it. I could see why they say they don't want it from a liability standpoint. It's I think it's unfortunate we can't do more to make this look nicer, but I just don't see it.
And also, when you add a "do not put your cigarette" sign out next to the planter, it kind of distracts from the beauty of the planter, right? If you have to put a sign, "Don't throw your trash in this planter," that's
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Preston. I have it open myself now. I'm looking at it in Google Maps and the 3D, and obviously I'm very much in support of greenery and greening up downtown Ashland. But this location, I just can't get on board with that. It just seems tight. I think the corner definitely needs to be improved looks wise. I'm hoping the downtown project obviously will improve the terrible look of this corner, really, but I don't think window boxes is the solution. I just don't see it in this case. I really support the work, obviously, of the committee. I love the work Kathy Rooney does, but here I don't think it's the right thing for this corner.
So I'm not sure of all the rules with this, but from the last situation we dealt with in that area where the developer donated some trees, there's like maybe some accommodation we could make for a donation to like that trees or something else across the street near the park. I mean, if we can't do that, there's got to be a way we can maybe find some common ground and still make downtown more beautiful than it was when we started this process.
That's an idea. Yep. So it takes away the liability, takes away the ongoing maintenance, but shows a commitment to beautifying downtown Ashland, which now this business is a part of. What that is, I am not sure, but.
I think just to speak again, this is, as a town planner, this is a site plan review. This is not a special permit. So I think I would prefer not to kind of stay away from any financial or money being exchanged. I think that, I think from the project level, I would like to go back or steer the conversation back to maybe authorizing, if possible, before and or maybe after the streets that downtown Ashland streetscape project takes place, which would allow Dr. Shaw to do some sort of greening of the building. However, I agree that we don't want to make any you know any we can't put any window boxes that would make passage by this building tighter than it already is or more restrictive. But I would like to move away from making financial contributions to just concerning this site plan review project.
And I think that if it was if he was remodeling the building and doing a bunch, but he's just turning it into a dentist office. So I think that's, he's switching the business around. So I'd hesitate to make him have to work out more money just for something. That building, it's just in the weird spots, right up to the sidewalk and.
All right, so are we ready for, do we need to, what's the order process to move things along here? What do we?
Yeah, I think, let's see, is this a hearing or, yes, this is a public hearing. So the process would be to vote to close the public hearing, and then we would presumably vote to approve the site plan with the conditions adjusted as discussed, and then designate one person to sign, so we don't all have to go into town hall and sign.
So what, can we run over the conditions again? Because we made a few changes.
Yes.
So we know what we're approving or not.
Okay, I believe the conditions, that the changes are, we're going to change the finding on F concerning window tinting to say that in discussions with design review committee, the applicant has concluded that instead of tinting the windows, they're going to use frosting, and Peter can put in the right technical what they agreed to with design review on that. We are going to change the parking requirement. While it'll still say that the applicant presented that they would direct their customers and employees to park in the Front Street municipal parking lot, that the requirement is that they direct customers and employees to park in legal public parking and avoid private parking for which they have not obtained a contractual agreement. I don't know that the town should get in the middle of that, so I don't think they need to inform the town if they get some agreement like that. But it's just, they've agreed to tell people where it's appropriate and where it's not appropriate to park, is the point of that. Okay. We're also adding the condition that should they choose in the future to add solar panels to the building that are flat with the roof or otherwise not visible from the streetscape, that is not to be construed as a violation of the site plan and does not require any further planning board review. And the
planter boxes.
And what I think would work well for a decision on the planting boxes is to say the planning board encourages greenery in front of the building, and the applicant is encouraged to add planters or planting boxes that are consistent with the downtown redesign and safe and appropriate pedestrian use of the sidewalks.
Okay. Anything else?
Does that, and I think that captures it all. Does everyone on the planning board agree that I have accurately represented, or more importantly, if I haven't accurately represented, speak up?
Okay. I think that was good.
Yeah, I think that works for me.
I understand. I just wanted to
Yep.
clarify it so we knew exactly where we were, changes we're making.
Okay.
Should I move that we close the public hearing on this?
Unless there's anybody else who wants to speak up from the public. Mark Dasani does. Oh, and we have one person waiting to get in. Mark, go ahead. Mark, you are muted. I have unmuted your phone, Mark. Can we hear you now? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I got one small question about the planters and the sidewalk combination. I probably would say underneath the bottom of the windows, this is put like in the centers of the corners can be opened. It'd be easier for people to walk by under all the windows to make them better, make them like a center, half length in the center. And I just figured that about the only thing that would probably be in my mind right now, but otherwise, everything seems, in your eyes, Chairman and the board and everything seems to be going the way it should go. And to the attorney, be surprised. I might disagree with both ways and be compromisable, but I'm going to stay with that. Thank you. Done.
All right. With that, not seeing any other requests for public comment. Now I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, that's been moved by Dale and seconded by Joe. Let's take a roll call vote to close the public hearing.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Phil Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
And Preston Crowe, aye. That passes 5-0. All right, I would now entertain a motion to approve the site plan with the modified conditions as laid out previously.
So moved.
Second,
That was moved by Dale and seconded by Tricia. Let's take a roll call vote.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Phil Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
And Preston Crowe, aye. That passes 5-0. I would now entertain a motion to authorize, should it be me, to sign this on behalf of the board so that we don't have to all come into town hall.
So moved.
Second,
All right, that was moved by Dale and seconded by Tricia for Preston Crowe to sign on behalf of the board. Roll call vote.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Phil Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
And Preston Crowe, aye. That also passes 5-0. All right, that closes out this item of business. So I would like to thank the applicant for bringing his business to Ashland and wish him very good luck. So hopefully, despite there being at least 3 other dentists on Main Street, we'll have room for 4.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we do have.
Thank you much, and thank town staff also for their hard work on this. Very much appreciated. Good night.
Right.
All right, and Peter, you can let me know when you have that that decision ready to be signed, you can email me a copy that I can review.
Oops. Yeah, we'll get you a copy as soon as possible, and we'll be in town. I'll be in town hall next Monday or Wednesday, and we can set up a time for you to come in, Preston.
Okay.
I assume, Peter, that you'll distribute that final document to everybody.
Yes, I'm actually working on it right now. So
Keep one ear tuned into the meeting.
I got both ears in.
All right. Our next item of business, we're running just a little late, is a discussion on a proposed tree protection bylaw. This has been supported by the Sustainability Committee, and they're looking to do a zoning change that would require some replantings or contributions to a fund to support that based on trees that are removed when we have site plan review and things like that. So if Margie, are you presenting on this?
I am.
All right. You could introduce yourself and then present this.
Okay. I'm Margie Gassell, and I am a member of the Ashland Sustainability Committee, and I am working with a number of different people on an informal tree committee to write a tree protection bylaw. Should I attempt to share my screen now?
If you'd like, or if you'd like me to, I'm actually set up, I could do it as well if you, whichever
Okay.
works for you.
Okay.
How does that look?
Looks okay to me.
All right, just tell me when to page up and page down on that.
I will do that. Okay, so trees have a lot of value and serve a wide variety of functions that promote the health, safety, and well-being of Ashland's residents. Could you go to the next slide, please? Urban trees have been shown to contribute to healthier people, for example, by reducing rates of heart disease and asthma and reducing stress. Trees filter fine particulate pollutants from the air and reduce deaths from heat exposure by cooling streets. According to Davy Trees, in 50 years, one tree produces over $31,000 worth of oxygen, provides $62,000 worth of air pollution control, and recycles $37,500 worth of water. Trees provide visual buffers and muffle noise by 5 to 10 decibels. Street trees improve the image of neighborhoods and increase property values by as much as 20%. In addition to these benefits, the Sustainability Committee strongly supports a tree protection bylaw because climate change is one of the most pressing problems of our time, and trees are an essential natural defense in counteracting the ill effects from climate change. Next slide. One such effect could be flooding, and trees are a natural protection against flooding. They absorb excess rainwater, make the soil more permeable, and slow the flow of water. Specifically, trees intercept and hold rain on their leaves, branches, and bark, increase infiltration and storage of rainwater through their roots, and reduce soil erosion by slowing rainfall before it reaches the soil. Trees reduce the amount of energy that we use to heat and to cool. Tree canopies slow down winds, which reduces heat loss from homes. Shading provided by trees reduces the amount of heat absorbed in buildings. Evaporation and transpiration convert water to vapor and cool the air by using solar energy that would otherwise result in heating of the air. And of course, trees remove carbon dioxide from the air. 1 acre of forest absorbs 6 tons of CO2 per year. Trees reduce atmospheric carbon dioxide in 2 primary ways. First, they sequester CO2 in their roots, trunks, stems, and leaves while they grow, and in wood products after they are harvested. And second, trees near buildings decrease greenhouse gas emissions by reducing heating and air conditioning demands. Ashland is fortunate to have a lot of wooded areas. Some of them we have lost, and others we may lose if we don't take action. Protecting our trees is important for many reasons, and especially for addressing climate change. The intent of the bylaw is to encourage the preservation and protection of significant trees during development and redevelopment projects that require a site plan approval, site alteration special permit, comprehensive permit, or subdivision approval. The bylaw would not impact private residential property owners. The specifics of the bylaw are still under discussion, so I will just introduce the main elements. The bylaw would specify that no person could remove any significant tree associated with any site plan approval, site alteration special permit, comprehensive permit, or subdivision approval without first receiving approval from the planning board. Applicants would need to provide a tree protection plan, either as a separate drawing or part of a landscape plan, with sufficient and appropriate information, including tree protection measures, mitigation or compensation for any removed trees, and other information as required by the town tree warden or the planning board pursuant to applicable regulations. The review of applications involving protected trees could be facilitated by the third-party review that is built into these permit applications, and the review would be performed by a certified arborist. The bylaw would also...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Margie. Is this on the slides? Are the slides?
No, I'm speaking, the slide is just to look pretty.
Okay, got it. All right, sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
No problem. The bylaw would also provide for protection of significant trees during construction, particularly the root systems. For example, vehicular traffic or parking, material storage, grading, and dumping of chemicals and other materials would be prohibited within a tree save area. There will be a cost to protect and preserve trees. Our aim is to be fair to developers and to the citizens of Ashland. Conserving our trees is essential for all of us. We hope to increase understanding of the value of trees so they won't be disregarded and cut down indiscriminately. The tree protection bylaw specifically supports Ashland's efforts to move to net zero, and it would be a part of the net zero action plan. If our efforts are successful, we can attract environmentally minded developers and promote sustainable development. Thank you. I welcome your questions and your input.
So, Preston.
So where is, I'm sorry, are we opening?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had muted my microphone. Questions from the board?
I'm just wondering where this stands at this time. Is this coming up as a warrant or I'm not sure that you're asking for input, but there's no documentation in front of us, so I'm not really sure.
That's correct.
It's kind of hard to keep track of everything you were saying, and so what kind of feedback are you looking for at this time?
Well, really, this was just an introduction to the concept of having a tree bylaw, and we are planning to bring it as a warrant article at town fall meeting, provided that things progress in a way that would be conducive to that. And I didn't go into details because we really haven't ironed them out yet.
Okay.
Can I just step in real quick? So, Trish, to answer some of your questions that you just kind of stated. So a few months ago, Margie in Florence came to the town manager and really kind of sprung this idea, I would say. And so Emma and myself and Frank Nakashi and our sustainability manager coordinator has been working with a small group of folks and just that kind of having to, I would say, continue a conversation regarding the development of such bylaw. Such a bylaw would be a zoning bylaw. It would have to be adopted by, as a zoning bylaw. So therefore, the planning board holds or is required to hold a public hearing and or submit the article to the warrant. And so I think tonight, Margie and I think Margie did a great job just kind of breaking the ice, explaining the ideas behind the tree bylaw. And there's still a lot of details to work out. Margie, as Margie stated, but I think tonight is just to kind of bring the conversation up to the board and just to kind of put it on everyone's radar. I think if all things in consideration, I think, hopefully maybe we can get something on the fall town meeting. When that would be is yet to be determined due to all the unknowns, I would say. However, I would say Florence and Margie, Emma, Frank, and myself, and Doug Small, the DPW director, and Roy from the DPW, we have been meeting, and at this time, it was appropriate for Margie to kind of bring her idea up to the planning board level.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just, say that both for myself and any of the members of the board, obviously, I'm sure we'll jump in as well, but knowing several of them from the Sustainability Committee and knowing others of them that were, I think, all in obviously favor of trees, in the other votes that we have taken about greenery and different things around Ashland. So, for myself personally, obviously, this is, and seeing some of the clear cutting that we've seen around Ashland, sometimes in a very surprising, mistaken kind of way, things that have happened. I think that all of us have a concern about maintaining green in Ashland, but that's such a general, what does that mean? That it's hard to comment any further without knowing the specifics, I guess, with everything else that we have to balance as a town. So I'm intrigued. I'm interested in knowing more about it and how it works and how it's related to what we do on the planning board. But all the details, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of details and a lot of thought that are going into all of this. So I assume we'll be hearing maybe regularly through the process about where this is going and what it actually entails.
Sure, we can do that.
I mean, right now I have no idea really what this is, just that it's about saving trees, and that seems like good. So I'm interested in knowing how that happens.
I agree. I think it's a great thing. Just need to see the details and how. I think it's a good project to get something in there.
Yeah, I'd echo the previous comments. Margie and Florence, thank you for your efforts to jumpstart this and to start this conversation in town. And I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot of great points in the presentation that you just had, and I look forward to hearing more and working with you guys on this initiative as it advances.
It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing that you'll want to bring the next time you're coming forward, once you have some more specifics about trees over a certain diameter, based on the diameter, these are the implications for requirements for replanting or contributing to a replanting fund, which I think is the direction you're going, is information about what other towns have done that have already passed things like this. Because my understanding is you're not asking us to be the first town to do this, that other towns have done this. So getting some ideas of, if something sounds like expensive, but you can say, well, these towns do it and they charge more, that is very good data.
Okay.
So a lot of people looking at this have no idea what numbers make sense. If you're not a developer or an arborist, is that tree worth $100? Is that tree worth $1,000? Is that tree worth $100,000? I don't know. So you need to sell us on that when you're ready to start talking real numbers.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how we can have something like this fit into the path that Ashland, I think, is laid out, or for itself, that it is going in since I've been here, moving in different sustainable direction, on many different fronts, but also making an effort to economically, turn us into a vibrant community as well. So how do we balance out, all those things and get the result that we want? So I'll be interested in having more of those discussions down the road. And it's nice to see you too. And Florence as well.
all right. Unless there's something else to be said on that, I think we should move on. We've got a lot going on tonight. Our next item of business is the continued public hearing on 81 West Union Street, Phase 2, as a special permit and amended site plan review. As we know, the applicant had a 3-building plan. The sense they got from the board was that it was not going to be approved. There was a request to show more kindness to the neighbors, I believe was one of the key phrases. They came back with a 2-building plan where they had left the 3rd building alone, which was the one farthest from West Union, and had taken the other 2 buildings and combined aspects of the 2 of them and moved it farther back. They have had, since we last met, they've been with Design Review Committee, I believe twice. And last night, Design Review voted that they were done reviewing this and sent a final report. So this is moving very quickly compared to what we've seen in the past on this. So with that said, there are significant changes to the buildings from when we've last seen them, and other information, and I'll turn it over to the applicant who can correct anything that I've summarized incorrectly and give us more details and information.
Thank you. Yes, we did meet with the design group twice. The first meeting we had was very good. We showed them essentially what we had provided you, got their comments. They asked for a few changes, which we've implemented into the plans you now have before you. And John will go through the updated plans and the nature of the architect, but from the viewpoint of bigger picture, from the viewpoint of the buildings, one of the things they wanted was on the storage building side of the new building that had been just basically a blank wall. So they wanted windows in the commercial space, which is in the front of that building, both in the 1st and 2nd floor. When you see the architectural plans, you'll see that we implemented that. The other issue that was a couple issues in regards to building 3, discussions or comments from the viewpoint of the residential. So what we did was we took the previous plan, had residential on the 2nd floors on both ends of the building. What we've done is move them to, let's call it the street side of the building, more in the residential area. So there's 2 units on that side of the building, one above the other. We have, as we talked with the board in the past, dedicated those 4 parking spaces next to those residential units for residential use. We've also designated the parking spaces next to the new building residential area for those residential uses. There was nothing asked in the nature of significant changes to the site plan. We made some modifications in regards to tree species revisions, and we're finishing off a detail on the planting details for things. But that was it. The second time we met with the design group, we had the plans you'll see in front of you, which is the architecturals of that building, as your board had requested some relationship between the 2 buildings. And when John takes you through that, you'll see the colors we're using to be the same, and also the roof element itself would be consistent with it. It's a different building in the face from the viewpoint of the numbers of bay doors as compared to what we call a commercial building, but we're doing as much as we can from the viewpoint of the consistency. The other thing that had been asked for was the nature of signage. So you'll see the plans. We have concern that I think as we explained, the way the commercial building lays out is that there are 2 commercial tenants on each of the 3 floors for potentially six units, yet that space is open, so that can be subdivided into any number, theoretically, probably up to 12 individual units, which is one of the reasons we didn't move forward with any modification or land banking of parking spaces, because if for the 6 units, if each of the units have 2 employees and a couple customers, you're up in the nature of potentially 24 parking spaces, and there's only roughly 24 parking spaces in the 3 parking fields across from that building. One of the things we are looking to chat with the board is in the nature of trying to provide a few more spaces behind that building. Those are the general service uses, and there's the way the parking is laid out opposite the building. There's ability to create 3 tandem spaces back there, which would be dedicated to each of the tandem spaces to one of the units. And that would be parking over and above what the requirement were, but it'll help lessen the burden in the nature of parking in the front of the building if we can grab those 3 spaces in the back. So that the commercial building we've added signage to that for concern of at least the 4, if not more, commercial tenants in the front of that buildings on the 2nd and 3rd floor. So we've created kind of a panel block along the front, which you'll see when we get to the architectural, and there would be part of the architectural plans also have a lighting fixture that goes underneath, so it shines directly up on the light. So there's no glare and nobody in the nature of bothering anybody beyond the building itself. So there was really no changes per se to the site that we've made. And we'll let John take you through the architecture. One of the things that's also in the package, I know the board had concern in the nature of, or questions in the nature of the height of this building. We have lowered the height by 3 feet, so that now we only have, I think it's a 9-foot floor on the 1st floor and 8 and an 8, which is really the minimum you can go for the commercial space. So we dropped that front elevation by 3 feet. And we have provided a perspective from the street, and given, as we had talked about, this building being 120 feet back, the height is more applicable from the commercial building, and that perspective doesn't have the corner element, which is above the 33 feet for the storage building. So our building is basically the same height now along the front as the storage building. In that perspective, if you pull out, that shows you that from the viewpoint of density or view from the street, the height is going to be more applicable to the existing approved storage building than our building. So that's kind of the overview. We'll let Jonathan take you through the revisions and the nature of the architecturals for both buildings.
evening. So Emma has the plans. Well,
Actually, Peter, can you make me a co-host so I can share my screen, please? Or anyone who's a co-host. Can you make me a co-host? Sorry, I thought I was already a co-host.
So I just wanted to say a note about the height of the building, B1. I'm calling it B1. It actually dropped 3.5 feet.
That was it. We're discussing it now.
No, I am ready to pull up some plans for the applicant. Oh, I'm a co-host. Okay. So here we go. Let's see.
That's
Peter mentioned the perspective, and then John, where would you like me to start?
So that's the perspective, arguably taken from across West Union Street. On the left-hand side, you can see that's at 33 feet for the storage building. Again, that doesn't include the corner element that goes up another 3 or 4 feet. You can see the Ferris house on the right. The height of that is equal or gives the appearance equal or higher than our building, because our building again is set back 120 feet from the road. So John can take you through the elevation changes we made in the architecture of the new building.
Now we'll start with B1. So on this cover page, you can and throughout this you'll see some of the original design mixed in with here, so we don't have to start going back and forth. But go ahead to the next page, because we updated the next page with what the building exteriors are, what the elements are, what the colors are, what the products are. We haven't made any changes to the footprint or any of that. So we were able to deal with the height issue. So go on to the next page. And then the next one, I have the floor plans first. We haven't made any changes at all to the floor plans. Please keep going forward. Thank you, Emma. All right, so here's the front elevation orthographically, so you can see that 212 hip roof. And there's two things about the mansard. The top of the mansard dropped 3.5 feet. The overall height of the mansard also is less than it was before. It was almost 12.5 feet tall before, but now it's only it's like 3 feet less. So you have a lot less roof area visible. And with the 212 hip roof, of course, it dropped 3 feet. Here on the bottom picture, you can see the signage. The plan is to mount them just below the gutter on the fascia and not to the roof. And we centered them over the windows and the doors of each of the towers or of the building. And then we made the main entrance different so that people would be able to know where the main entrance is to the elevators and the stairs. We also made, in some of the designs, you can't really tell it in this one, but you'll see it later on, that we eliminated the board and batten and we went to a double four, a clapboard look, and then the gambrels and dormers are cedar impressions. And then we changed the color of the roof to a weatherwood instead of a black. And we're next page. This is where we talk about how we're illuminating the signs. We want to be very discreet and we don't want to mount anything to the roof. So you'll see the light that would mount on the bottom of the sign and shine up on to the signs to illuminate them. And then inside the main entry, basically on the left, you would see it through the left window and the right window on the walls. Just inside, there will be directories somewhat like the ones you see. So once you go into the foyer, you'll be able to, it'll direct you to where the different tenants are, or the different companies or people are. So go on to the next one. This is the orthographic of the left side. You can see the windows we added. You also can see the height changes. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but you'll see on the rear of the building, the mechanical rooftop. To the next slide. Here is the residential side. Orthographically, you can see all the different changes made here. We really were able to clean up that on the decks, where the decks were. We were able to eliminate those tall walls. We didn't make any changes to windows or anything like that. To the next page. Here's the rear of the building, orthographically. And you'll be able to see it a little bit better in the 3D images, what we've come up with for the rooftop for the mechanicals, for the commercial side. To the next slide. So what I did here, I'm showing all of the elevations together, so you can kind of get a walk around the building, but see it orthographically and see it in scale, see the sizes. You can go to the next slide. One of the things that Tricia had mentioned was about a flat roof. So we wanted to show what this building would look like orthographically with a flat roof. And so this is, right now, everything else is exactly the same, but instead of having a hip roof, you have a flat roof. And it drops the overall height. You can see on the left there, I show where the ridge height was. You can see that's a considerable drop. And if you zoomed in a little bit, I could tell you what, we could look at what that impact of that is.
The plus, Emma. Yep.
Yeah, so it's 7 feet. So that bridge rises 7 feet above the mansard. And you can actually see, you know, there would be a small section toward the back. Orthographically, you see it, you see the mechanical area. But when you get to, when you're standing on the ground or even from the street, you're not going to see that. We can keep going through. There's a lot to go through. And now we're getting into some 3D images. I tried to show them in 3D where you could see that this does have the hip on it. And keep going. We'll just go through these quickly. There's from the as you're coming in. Okay, and keep going. There's on the residential. You can see that we really cleaned up that wall, got rid of that tall wall by bringing that roof down.
One question. In this image, it looks like is this 3D rendering that assumes the flat roof, or is that
no?
Correct?
That still has the hip. You can see on that if you look.
Okay, yeah, it's got the ridge in it. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so these are, so you just showed us the view with the flat roof and the height impact that has. These 3D renderings reflect some of the changes, but it does not reflect the flat roof and the height impact, right?
I have 3D images with the flat roof as well.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
My impression is you're showing us the flat roof because we asked about it, but you're not proposing to build that. That's not your preference. Is that correct?
We actually prefer to do it as a flat roof. We like it as a flat roof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Reduces the height.
Yeah. Plus, it reduces the height, and so yeah, we don't have any issues with. I like, because really when you're on the property, you're not going to see that roof anyway. It adds no to us. Because from the ground, it doesn't really add any architectural value to the building at all. So we'll move on to the next page. Now, this is still with the hip roof. As you can see how it slopes up along the side walls. And with the roof, I need to have walls around, except I have a 48-inch guardrail to protect people from falling off the building, but also let water run off out of that area in a way to get the snow when it melts off. Okay, we can go to the next one. So now here is a 3D with the flat roofs. So now instead of walls around, which would have had to been, they were almost 5.5 feet tall to encase around the roof. Now I have a 48-inch railing around that area to protect people working on it. And there's a roof hatch that gets you up there. So there's not going to be anybody walking around on the roof unprotected. And then I think I have one more from like the rear of that. So you can see there's visually from the roof, there's a big difference. It doesn't change anything below the top of the mansard. It just changes what it would look like above it, and you're not going to see it. So go to the next one. I do have some images. Like this is a view 50 feet away with the camera set 8 inches off of the pavement and looking up. This is what you would see as you're walking around the building. And then I show one more view where I'm 90 feet away coming up the road. Again, the camera is set to 80 inches off of the perimeter. So you can really see that you have to be on the other side of the road to even get a glimpse of the hip roof. So to the next page. So that you can see colors. We had 3 different colors. We had the blue and the grays with the darker roof. We presented to you the spruce color, the green one, with the gray and a darker roof. And we're talking with our designer and our architect. We came up with a different color scheme. And so that's Hearthstone is the name of the color. And then it has the cedar impressions in the dormers and the gambrels. We still have the hardy shingles as a wainscot around the porch. To the next one. Nope, that was it.
Yeah.
That was the last page. Yep. Do you want to go to a different document?
I'm sorry?
Would you like me to go to a different document?
Do you want to weigh in on this building now, or you want to move on to the other building? You want to talk about this one?
I think I'd prefer to go on to building 3 because one of the big things that was raised is they didn't seem to work together. And I think you've done a lot to address that. So if you show that one, then we'll have the full picture.
All right. So the very first page shows you that. You'll see up in the right corner, there's our new building 3. Bottom right is what it looked like before. And to the left is the new building 1. So you can see the Mansards talk to each other. We did the same thing here. We have a 212 hip roof on it, but we also are going to show it with a flat roof. You can see the residentials. So now we have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathroom on the first floor, ADA compliant. Then we have a second floor with 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. And then you have the staircases just for that second floor unit. If you go to the next page, please. Thank you, Em. So I guess if you zoomed in on it, it might see it a little better. But this is what's facing building 1. Again, that top view is where I can't see the right side. I'm sorry because of the zoom. Okay, so you're just seeing, I'm showing you the eave line and the top of the mansard heights there. And you see the top one, that's showing it with a flat roof. But then you'll see our building is 39 feet 1. Okay. So go to the next one. Oh, thank you. And there's what it looked like before. You can see we dropped the eave line, and the overall height of the building only increased by 8 inches, but you can see it's a hip, it's not a gable. So really it's not, it's only in the middle part of the building if we were to go with a 212 slope. So it's relatively the same as that building and actually a little less intrusive. So
just to understand, the redesigned building 3 has the hip has the hip roof on it, or is a flat roof like building 1?
Well, if you go to the next page, Emma, you'll be able to see it. So there it is orthographically with the 212 hip.
Okay.
Okay, and then if you zoom back a little bit, we can see the old building. And now you can see the stairs switch back. You got a little more windows. It softens up the look of the building a lot. And you can see the important heights there. Okay, go to the next slide. Right, because the hip only adds height to the building, and it doesn't have, again, it has no architectural benefit to these buildings. Now here's with a flat roof. So on the other side, we cleaned up that. Now you don't have staircases and all that. And all the residential's on the same side now. Go to the next one. This is the rear of the building. Here you can see that because I actually show what the height of the building is. I never had done this before, but because of the grade change in the back, the eave is only like 18 feet off of that walkway, and the back of the building is much shorter from the rear to the neighbor there. And even though, in these general services really, are not going to have air conditioning in the building, we wanted to show if somebody wanted to have air conditioning in the mezzanine or in the lower, say if somebody in the bottom wanted to make an office, we're showing wall-mounted mini splits on the wall up high instead of up on the roof, because it's easy access along the back because it's not nearly as tall. And because of the height of the building, we really don't want to put anything on the building back here other than your to code vents for plumbing. And I showed a zoomed in view of that where you could see the wall mounted mini splits. And as you're all aware, there's hardly any noise that comes from a mini split. They're very quiet. And go to the next one. This is just showing the floor plans. You're going to see a zoomed in of the residential. So now you have consistency across on the general services. And go to the next one. And so the residentials stack on top of each other. You got a shorter bay. And go to the next slide, please. So these are the residentials. The one on the left is the first floor, then the second floor. Follow the same layout, but to meet ADA, I had to make hallways and bathrooms bigger, an arrangement a little bit different. On to the next ones. All right, so these are just 3D images. And before I forget, we'll want to show the site plan to show the green areas that we are providing for the residential there. It's not all asphalt. So this is showing you lifted up so you can see the hip roof, and we'll just go through these. And then keep going. And here it is with the flat roof. Again, we're not going to put any mechanicals up here other than just your standard code vents for certain items. There's not going to be any equipment that has to be maintained. The condensers for the residential are underneath the stairs. There's plenty of space there for them. To the next slide. This is just a 3D from the back showing it with a flat roof. To the next one. Again, this is showing that these are orthographic views of the building with a flat roof, and you could see that dimension line which showed where the hip was. You can see how much it drops down. Okay, go to the next one. Is that it?
That's the last
page. All right. We have the site plan. And zoom in on that new residential that's green in building 3 for us. Thank you. So you can see they've added some green space there for that area, and it's other than an emergency egress out of that first bay, there's really nothing going on there for from the commercial side of there's no reason for anybody to be going through there. So I guess now we're open for comments.
Okay, I will start. I like a lot of what you've done. I thought I saw something about needing to flip one of the handicap spots. That they're not consistent as to which side has the extra access space.
The handicap spots across from the new building, we flipped so that the crosshead area is on the right-hand side, so that's the van accessible space. So that's consistent with the requirements now.
Okay. So, all right, but the ones for right close to building 1A and close to building 3 are on the left.
That's just a walkway. You don't need hash if the handicap space meets the dimensional requirement. We just added in a notation for a walkway.
Okay, so that only the one in the front there is like van accessible by that standard.
Is the one van required is one accessible van is required, and that's what we provide. Three non-van are also required, and we provide those.
It looks like the one behind the building is on the right too, right?
Yeah. It's not as wide though, but so it's a walkway more than a van unloading.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I'm not an expert on the technical requirements, but you've checked that out, and that's good.
While you're on that, while you're on that accessible space, basically the area we're talking about for those tandem spaces are the 3 spaces to the right of that hash mark that would extend into that green area. And that would provide 3 more employee parking spaces for 3 of the general service uses. We haven't made that change yet, but that's one we will make.
Okay. A minor thing, you've shown the flat roof as black. I would highly encourage you to make it white or some light color that minimizes heating in the summer. I've heard that that can actually lower building temperatures by 5 to 10 degrees. I don't know if I've got the numbers right, but it is actually quite significant in comfort without air conditioning or in energy use with air conditioning.
Yep, I actually studied up on that myself, and you're right. There are only 2 colors typically, black and white. The reason why it was black was because it had a hip, and then I lowered it to a flat, and I just didn't change the color. But we'll consider that, because you're right. It would instead of absorb the heat, it would reflect it, and probably would. Yeah. So we'd have to investigate about wintertime, which one works better for melting snow. So if it has any impact at all. So.
The building's going to need to be structurally sound to hold whatever snow might show up.
Oh yeah.
So you probably, if it lasts a while, then it's also free insulation. As long as it's not going to damage the roof, which you're going to have to design for anyway from an engineering standpoint. That's really all I have. I understand you said because you don't know whether there's going to be lots of little businesses or big businesses, you don't want to reduce any of the parking. I do like some of the green space you've added just a little bit here and there, but anything you do that breaks up the sea of asphalt that you had in the original submission is good. I also agree with the 3 different color schemes. I agree with the conclusion of the one you picked. I will turn it over to the rest of the board.
I have a couple of comments on the building 3 now. Because I'm not a certified architect or anything like that, but to me, in my view of it is that if the buildings start to match too much, it makes the whole project look bigger to me. Because with the residential, when you go into a residential neighborhood, it's different homes, different colors, that's what's nice about it. Like the difference between going to a neighborhood with custom homes or going to one with tract homes. So I know you guys are probably going to disagree, but I actually like the old design better. And if it's different, to me, that's more appealing than if both buildings are really similar. Just because it makes it doesn't look as much as neighborhoods. All the houses are different colors, different sizes, and this is kind of in a neighborhood behind houses, and this is just. It's a strange way to look at it, probably. In my opinion, if they're different, that's appealing to me. So either one of those, because actually the new one looks more like a Jiffy Lube or something to me. It looks a lot more like a commercial building than the other one. You know, the other one's still big. It's a big garage, but to me that the new one, I know you put a lot of work. Either way, it's fine. It's back in there. But just as far as the buildings having to match, I have a different opinion of that, because I think the variety, first of all, building one's going to be right next to that storage thing, which is completely not anything like this. And then to me, when you put too many buildings the same together, it makes the whole development look bigger. I know if I'm explaining that right, but so either way, I mean, it's back in there. I like either one. I would prefer the old look in a different color. The flat roof is good. I think it doesn't matter to me because, like you said, you really, from anywhere you look, you're really not going to see. You're going to see equipment or the roof if you see anything. Other than that, I think it looks pretty good.
Hey, Dale, this is Bill Rodenizer. I'm off camera, so I'm just identifying who I am.
Okay.
I appreciate your comments. We did show the 3 different colors. The designer we were working with kind of started leaning towards that last one that we showed. But to your point about providing some differences on the site, maybe the colors is one of the ways to do it in the different buildings. And we were definitely looking to have the board's opinions on the 3 different colors. And if you guys wanted to have, I'm really not swaying one way or the other. I mean, I kind of liked the spruce, but then the designer was interested in going more into like a taupe because of the color of the storage. But you're right, maybe it should be breaking up the colors a little bit. And we're very interested in the board's opinions. And maybe that's a way to try to make the site, look a little bit nicer with just the coloration. Another way to.
I just think of 2 big buildings the same color is going to stick out more than 2 different colors and design. That's my weird train of thought. I don't know technically if that's a good thing or not, but I just look at it as people will have a nice big white or yellow house and a red barn, the houses around that residential area, there's different styles and different colors. And then you go in and you build 2 big buildings that are exactly the same. It just is more, it stands out more to me.
Yeah, we just need consensus. We're willing to go any which way.
Yeah, and I'm either way I'm okay with that 3rd building, but that's just my opinion that I think it would actually be more pleasing overall if it was some contrast between the buildings.
We did provide a picture of the storage if Emma wants to bring that up.
And I don't want to get it, I don't want to try to convince anybody to, change your mind about it. I'm just saying that's my opinion. In my opinion, having different buildings on there to me lessens the impact. But either way, especially since that building 3 is really way back in there, you probably, once everything's overgrown, I don't know how much of it you'll see, but you'll just see the one side of it from the highway or from the neighbors' houses. But just, that's my opinion, that it really doesn't bother me that the buildings don't look identical or as close as possible. I prefer the slope roof look than the Pizza Hut look, kind of, with the other one, because there's no other details. It's just a big Mansard square roof around the top, which makes it look like a commercial building more, I think.
Well, I think that's just revealing that it's just, these aren't 100% yet, that this is a good, I think another good step in helping these buildings to relate to each other, instead of having one front building and one shed out back, which is basically what that back building becomes. I think it does become the shed on the site. And as it's part of the site and we're trying to get greenery, trying to make it a nice space out there, I would disagree. I think that the Mansard roof is a step forward, though it's not there yet in the way these things should come together. I mean, one of the problem with this project from the beginning is that we're looking at these big footprints and trying to cover them with residential scale roofs, right? A gable is meant to go on a house. It's not meant to go on these size of buildings. Same thing with the mansard. It is a common way to roof a building, to have the mansard roof and then a low pitch on top, but not on buildings this size. It doesn't work. The proportions just don't work on these modern footprint buildings. And so that's why the flat roof came into that. You have the mansard roof and the flat roof hiding behind it, because these buildings are just too big for these historical roof types, right? That we like because they look historical, right? This huge footprint behind it. So these are the kind of games that you play in architecture to get the look that you want and the feel that you want. So in this kind of building, to me, seeing that big, low gable on the original design of Building 3 is just that. It's just a huge shed that, you know, isn't providing much to go with visually. And I think the mansard isn't quite there yet either, but it's moving in that direction. And you talk about the amount of detail. This is going to be part of the next step of this thing. On Building 1, they have a very wide mansard roof, the eave overhang, which is pretty typical on a mansard roof, but there's no detail underneath it. They have a few little corbels, you know, under there. But if you start to Google a mansard roof with this kind of wide 2 foot or whatever it is overhang, that thing is typically full of detail, which makes it a very delicate, a very decorative element on the building. And these are things that have to be looked at. Otherwise, that's going to be a big blank sheet of white up there. And it looks, to my eyes, it looks cartoony because it's not done yet. And that when I say that things need to be taken to the next level, that needs to be looked at. Because when that is built, that 2 foot or whatever overhang it is, it's going to look kind of funny, because that's not the way mansard roofs look, right? So it's another layer that I think there needs to be some kind of, if you have any questions about that, just let me know and I'll show you some examples of how these things work. It's just another example of like, okay, we're at one stage and now it's taking it to the next level of detail. Some of the other things I see on here is on Building 1, the lowering of the roof makes all the dormers kind of stick up so much as these false roofs, these false dormers, which again is done, but often you take that roof a little further back so that you can fool people a little bit better, that you're not just getting the movie set kind of 1 foot thick wall in that. And that needs to be looked at. Also, on Building 1, all the gables, I see it in certain perspective, but all those window dormers are set into the eave when really they should be aligned with the building. You're putting a lot of weight on that eave when typically those dormers, that dormer wall is aligned with the outside wall of the building, so that the weight from that roof goes straight down onto the wall of the building. So these are these kind of tweaks that kind of tell me you're getting the feel for how the building looks, but it's not really there yet. The other issue I have is the signage on the first, on Building 1. You know, I think with playing with those roof heights, you may have enough space to, if you go with the flat roof, to get that first floor up a little higher. And then that signage could be underneath the eave where it's supposed to be, and kind of, instead of just like standing up as these little placards along the roof, which is going to be a big snow catch to me. It's just not it's a strange place to put signage. That roof pitch that they're attached to is plenty steep. It easily could be more shallow and let that happen. So again, I think I'm really pleased with the direction this is heading. I don't think right now it's a matter of just picking a color and we're ready to go. I think we're down, it's looking at it another time in more detail, because I wouldn't want this exactly to be built. If that's what we're approving, that you need to build these drawings, then it's not ready yet. It's getting there. It's making impressive progress each time, but it's not there yet. in my opinion.
I'll wait for other people to comment before I comment on that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just had some, other questions beyond what Tricia said, just in terms of the flat roof concept. And I know they said that they moved the condensers, but I wasn't exactly sure where the condensers got moved to.
On building 1?
Yeah, you said you moved the condenser on the flat roof.
Well, whether it's a hip roof or a flat roof, they're still in the same area. They're in the middle back of the building. That's it.
Okay.
That's with a hip roof.
So it doesn't matter either way the condensers are going to be there?
That's toward the middle of the building so that your lengths of, you wouldn't want to, we don't want to spread them all across the roof. We wanted to put them toward the middle of the building in the back so that the distances are better for mechanicals, and also again, you're not going to see them on the site, but
I was just making sure I understood when you said that they were, I thought you said they were going to be under some stairs. I just wanted to make sure I understood where they were going.
The residential condensers are underneath the stairs in the back. You can see them there on the left. The commercial side, they're up on the roofs.
Okay. And on like a side note too, as far as like when we're talking about the roofs and things like this, if I don't know who is online or, as this continues, this would be one of those things where I would really love to hear from the abutters and the people right there, where we're talking about this, what their thoughts are on it as well, because they're the ones that are going to be right there. So I would absolutely value their opinions on this as we go along in this process where we seem to be like oscillating between these options. But like everybody else said, I see like, I'm again pretty surprised with the progress that we're making and pleased. So I'm happy where we're going.
I just to jump in quickly. I like the attempt to tie in building 3 with building 1. I actually, I like the color and some of the redesigned component pieces there. I like the flat roof better, especially on building 1. I think from a height perspective, I think that just looking at it, I'm just trying to find the page towards the back of the deck here, 1 second, just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, but it basically is indicating that the height of the roof is 34 feet on the flat roof building 1, if I have that correctly.
Yes, it's 33.7.
Yep. Okay. And so, I definitely think that I think that from a height perspective, that it's a substantial adjustment to it in response to some of the comments last week. And I'm thinking about Dale's comments in terms of building 3. I like the alignment stylistically and pulling the colors in and so forth. I also think the flat roof on building 3 also reduces the height down to 32, 33 feet again there as well. In terms of the difference in color, I'm not an architect or style expert there, so I I don't know, but I do think this definitely did move along nicely since our last comment and our conversations. In terms of some of the finishing, comments from Trish,
Say this.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
In terms of some of the finishing comments from Trish, I kind of value her input on these things, and definitely think she has a much stronger sense for some of these finishing details. Like I did notice the eave to the left of building 1. It does look like a really big eave there with kind of a big side of the building. I know you added the windows and the door, and that definitely helps, but like I got to defer to Trish on some of the finer points of things that she's trying to address and work through here.
This is Bill again. Can I, Trish, can I ask you a question? A couple of things that you said. So on the mansard, on the roof, on the details, you said you could share some examples of things that, you have preference to. We'd be definitely open to that. And you also mentioned the flat, if we had a flat roof, that might allow us to elevate. I think, I want to make sure I understood this. You were talking about the signs, perhaps, if the first floor were taller, being able to be underneath that roof overhang. Is that what you meant? I didn't want to misunderstand that. Ooh.
Oh, she's muted.
Did we lose her?
Yeah.
No, she's muted. No.
All right, got it. Yeah, so you said, I think you said that the first floor of that had to go down to 8 feet right now. For the first,
9.
Was that right?
9?
Okay, so 9 obviously is better. But what I was wondering if that, if we're getting any extra space, you can give it to that first floor, and can you get that roof, the lowest roof up a little bit? It has a pretty good pitch on it from some of the angles I could see, so that you can get that sign hanging underneath that eave, so that you're walking underneath the sign. It's just a little strange for it to be sticking up like that.
No, I think that's a good point, because then we could actually use, if you guys like the rest of the lights that we're using on the site, the type that kind of, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a globe that hangs over, and those could be mounted above it and would look more uniform with the rest of the site.
I'm not sure. We're talking about building 1, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, because on building 1, I mean, they would still be. Unless I'm looking at the wrong light fixture, I mean, it would still be hanging underneath the eave. So I'm not sure what wall it would be on, the globe. Those lights, if it was a wall hung light.
Yeah, I was talking about it coming off the edge of the roof, the light, so we could actually light it from above.
Right. It depends if you have the gutter there. That might be tricky to do, but
if you guys are up for that, that's it. I mean, I think that's a good idea. And if we have the flat roof and we can add that height to the first floor, then that gives us something to look at to deal with the sign issue that you brought up. So,
I mean, when I'm looking at height, the height for a residence is 35 feet in Ashland, basically, right? So, anything, to me, anything up to 35 feet isn't even a question, because it's a house,
Yeah.
So it's just how you play with the feet that you have and where it goes. And there's always a lot of options in there. There's a lot of things to play with. When I talked about the examples of the Mansard roof, it's partly for, the project's benefit, for your benefit, because typically I'm not sure exactly how big your overhang is, if it's maybe 2 feet or more. But usually that area is filled with expensive detailing, on that style of roof. So you might be doing yourself a favor to get rid of some of that overhang. So if you look at different Mansard roofs, there's some with There's some with a very deep overhang that can go to a narrow overhang. But once you have that big overhang, it's looking to be filled with corbelline, detailing as a decorative area. So it's not something
If we
that's
can
typically
provide
just left
examples of
blank.
that, we can take a look and work with that sign area.
Yeah, sure. I mean, they're not hard to find, but you might save yourself a lot of problem there. And actually, I think going with a flat roof is going to just that scale of. I mean, this isn't a scale of project that I work on, but having a low pitched roof, a low pitched gable roof over the size of these buildings is difficult. You have just as much snow and rain that's going to sit up there on a low slope roof as you do on a flat one that's graded, just a 1/4 inch per foot. So, and that is meant to take the snow load as a flat roof. So I don't know if we need to do something special to allow that flat roof as a matter of, that'd be a question for Peter, maybe if generally a flat roof isn't allowed, but we can allow it for these
No,
kind of
we can there's any flat roof, and that's what we're going to go with, because I think that's what I'm hearing to be the consensus of the board.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the zoning about not having flat roofs. So it'd just be a building code issue, and people build them. So I can't see there being an issue.
Okay, so we'll revise the plans. We'll take out the other roof structures, and we'll go with the flat roof depiction. The other issue we need is a consensus on the color, so we can finalize those elevations. 1, consensus on color, and 2, consensus as to whether the colors should be the same on both buildings or different.
I don't think we need
answers to those.
I don't think we need a consensus on color at this point. I think that's premature. Often we have people coming back to the planning board to choose colors once the building's in construction. I do think, right now the new building 1 has, it looks like maybe 3 colors on it. One thing that you might do is just mix up those colors that use the same colors, but maybe one that is only used a little bit on building 1 maybe becomes the primary color on building 3. So they still talk to each other, but they're not twins. They're not trying to be twins. They're speaking the same language. So which I think is important to the site.
So we'll make some difference in
Dale's opinion as well, but
yeah,
we'll
I certainly
colors between the 2 buildings.
Yeah, as I've said, I certainly like this color scheme of the color schemes that have been presented. I'd be happy with this, and I'd be happy with both buildings being the same or being complementary. I think when you look at the site plan, you see that the buildings are actually a good distance from each other. I don't think it's going to make a big difference overall whether they're the same colors or complementary colors. I'm happy either way there. If we don't have anybody else pressing from the board right now, I'd like to. We have I believe, an abutter who has his hand raised. Emery Bond, I see you've got your hand raised in Zoom. Bond, do you have something to say?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little faint, but we can hear you.
Is this any better? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, that's a lot better.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about flat roofs, and the restrictive covenant from everybody's favorite topic says there should be no flat roofs. What's the final resolution on that? What's changed?
I had not looked back at the restrictive covenant, and if the restrictive covenant says no flat roofs, then we would either have to modify the covenant or not have flat roofs. I'd have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, look at item 7 on the restrictive covenant.
But can I comment on that?
Yes, you may comment.
It's our position from the beginning. The covenant is not applicable. It's been our position that we would work to fulfill the intent and spirit of the covenant, which again are not replicable. So it's my position that if the board made a determination of flat roof, and that's what the board approves, as far as we're concerned, that's what we build anybody wants to try to appeal the applicability of the covenant, so be it. We'll run that risk, but you know, the storage building is a flat roof, and that's not applicable there. And you know, again, it's trying to fulfill what the goals of the covenant were, which is a mixed-use project and all the other things we've done, 3-story height. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there's no requirement that it can't be a flat roof, if that's what the board.
I would just urge the board to look at item 7 in the restrictive covenant. And then the second thing is, can we get an update on phase 1, when phase 1 is going to be complete? And there's, you know, we were talking back in January when the applicant's attorney said that, you know, the landscaping was forthcoming to hide the building. You know, there's weeds growing, there's no stop sign, there's no fence around the trash enclosure. The paving isn't done. There's no crosswalk across the access road adjacent to West Union Street. Can we get an update on that?
No.
I can take that question. Thank you, Mr. Bond. Right up until the shutdown of COVID-19 in the town, from my point of view, I was working, and the town was working with the storage facility company, and we were progressing towards going through the checklist and going through their punch list. There was, you know, the town did issue a temporary occupancy permit, and the town did take a request. You know, the town did make a request and received a bond, a cash bond from the storage facility company, and I do hold that in escrow. The planning board does hold that bond in escrow. I have been in communication. I believe last week at the latest point with the storage facility company, talking about how to move forward with the development and the completion of phase 1. They had, I would say, they had a punch list, and they had items and contractors scheduled to complete some of the work. However, but due to COVID-19 and the shutdowns that every business and every, I would say, employment sector faced, they hit a roadblock. And so I will, the outcome I do want to say is, Emery, is that I have been in communication with them, and I am working towards the completion of phase 1. We do have a bond in place, and COVID-19 really kind of put the brakes on the completion of that phase 1 for the time being. But however, Wasatch Storage will continue to finish that building in a timely manner.
So we're on 26 months of construction on that building. Did they give you any sort of rough timeline? Did they elect to stop? Did the town stop them? Can you give some flavor on that?
I think everything stopped. Well, did they elect to stop? No, they couldn't get their contractors. They couldn't get, you know, workers. The site shut down. And so we have not issued a full occupancy permit. I understand that abutters are frustrated, and the town is frustrated with the neighbors that the project is not complete yet. However, regarding the circumstances with a national pandemic that we're still in under a state of emergency, I would like to reiterate that the owner of the facility could not get contractors at a safe social distancing. Right now, we're in a phase 1 of the opening, and hopefully within phase 2, they'll be able to kick it back in gear and get the project complete.
Peter,
I just find I find it a little ironic that the work down at 128 Main Street has been going on ever since the shutdown, and they've significantly been able to advance that project. Working inside, where outside work at 81 West Union Street couldn't advance at all. It's just a little frustrating.
I take your comment, and I'm not going to get in the back and forth with you.
I urge, and the most important thing is the dust. Now that the drier weather is, I would urge everyone to go down and see Mr. Ferris walk by his yard. He has to wear a dust mask in his yard. He can't go anywhere else because of COVID-19 pandemic. He's a prisoner in his own home because of the dust. and we just implore you, the board or the applicant, to do something about the stockpile of material that's uncovered and blowing dust into the Ferris property.
Yeah, the stockpile should be watered daily if there are issues. We should look to do some, and we should ask the building inspector to do some enforcement action if need be on that.
We've been talking about dust in this site for a long time. Like I'm biting my tongue to a great degree about the owner of the CubeSmart, right? I'm not going to go there, but I know that Peter, as our town manager, you're doing the best you can with them, but like they are bar none, hands down, persona non grata, the worst. Like I'm going to stop.
But the stockpile
to go to the dust, to go to the dust. Like we talked about this dust a year ago. Like it has to be dealt with. It must be dealt with. We talked. This is the 10th time we've talked about this.
Joe, just to answer Joe and to Emery, I did have a very thorough discussion with Mr. Barberi and Mr. Rodenheiser concerning dust today. And I hopefully made it very clear to both parties that dust has been and is an ongoing issue. And Mr. Rodenheiser, Mr. Barberi, who are here on the call tonight, stated that they understand dust is an issue, and they know that the town is very frustrated. The planning board is very frustrated. And these words tonight cannot be taken lightly, because something has to be done immediately by the property owner. And as we do this, and I do want to state that I did have a long conversation with both of them today. And I know it's ongoing, and you probably don't want to hear words anymore. You want to see action, and I do need to see action, and the planning board does need to see action, and the town is looking into enforcement, and so I just want to leave it at that.
Well, yeah, I just want to say that I agree with Joe, because that's when I came on the board about a year ago, and that's one of the first issues I remember as well. And so it is kind of an old issue, and it does make me feel a little hesitant about, the speed of pushing this, trying to help aid the next phase of 81 Union Street go forward if they can't handle the problems they have now. So maybe we need to see that handled before these phases can go any further. Like, are they capable of handling the problem?
I agree. My next question is in regards to building 3, and it's not titled, so it's going to be on the 81 West or 81 presentation PB 5-28-20 document on sheet 3 of, hold on, I think either 3 of 13 or 11 of 13. It shows 6 white boxes which appear to be future HVAC units that could be added to the commercial element of that building. Is there any requirement for screening of HVAC equipment of that nature?
Again, those are small units in the back of the building to cover the mezzanine space. They're nothing more than a residential, basically commercial or small commercial unit. There won't be any noise in there. They meet the zoning setback requirement.
I thought there was a screening requirement, so they weren't visible in the bylaws of Ashland.
Building, so the screening of the building covers the screening of the units.
I'm looking at a drawing, and it shows white boxes that are not, they're visible. They're not hidden by anything. They're between windows.
I'm not sure, but I think for things like that, we're going to have to look at, the spirit of what the regulation is versus units that are units that are rooftop units that are large mechanical looking units and units that are meant to be finished units on the outside of buildings. So that's something, it's a good point to bring up, that we can look at it, but we have to look at the, you know, what the regulation was intended for and what is being presented here.
And then my last comment, hopefully my last comment, is can someone tell me what the height of the new proposed building is? It looks like it got taller, and I think that's what was mentioned before. It got taller by 8 inches.
Which building you talking about?
Building 3.
The height hasn't.
Yeah, well, it went up 8 inches if you're changing the roof, right?
If it's a
What is the proposed height of the proposed building?
It depends
with the flat roof, the height
what is being proposed?
What is the height?
Flat roof, that's what they said.
Yeah.
The flat roof is lower, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
It's significantly lower.
Here, I'll present. It's 32.3 feet, right? It's in your B3, file B3.
7 feet lower.
It's 32.3 feet if it's a flat roof, which is
7 feet lower than it would have been.
yeah. The height here. I'll just present like here. There you go. Hold on.
Yeah, actually,
So
the original building was 38.7, and it looks like the new building with the flat roof would be 32.3.
Yeah, so I said 32.3.
6
So
lower.
where is it? There.
That's
so with a flat
feet
roof,
4 inches shorter.
32.3.
So which one is being proposed tonight? What is in the plan set tonight that's being proposed, or are we looking at options?
We are going forward with the flat roof, which is again lower in height than what the original building.
And one question I'd have for you, Mr. Bond, as an abutter, do you object to the flat roof for any reason other than the fact that the covenant says that they won't build a flat roof?
He's raising his hand. Does he need?
He's unmuted.
Yeah, he's unmuted.
So I prefer a roof with a little bit more body that fits into the character of the neighborhood. We've already done the flat roof on the storage building, so I see that card has already left the station on that. So we should be designing to the parameters that is on the site, and if that's a problem, we should be working towards a solution.
And I would also ask, I understand there's some dispute over the enforceability of the covenant. I don't see anything in the text of the covenant that says how it would be modified. How would we go about modifying it in the event that it is enforceable? What would it take to do that?
Preston, I think that's a decision. That's a question I can raise up to the town council, and obviously we're going to continue this meeting tonight, so I can get a response back for the next meeting.
Because I think the consensus of the planning board is that flat roof is not the prohibition on a flat roof is not to the benefit of the town, and if we could change that term in a way so that the covenant is modified so that there's just simply no dispute over it, depending on how much hassle that is, that might be the right thing to do, as opposed to approve something and say that if somebody wants to fight the enforceability of the covenant in court, they can, because I just rather not go there if we can avoid that.
To me, this feels like a letter of the law versus spirit of the law. I wasn't here when the covenant got signed, but at the end of the day, it's trying to avoid a Jiffy Lube or a square box, flat roof, basic bare bones. Like, that would be my sense. And putting the gambrel in and having a flat roof, like, I think it's spirit of the law versus letter of the law. That's my feeling on that. But
I agree with that. I think we have to do what's in the spirit of the covenant. I disagree with Mr. Barbieri on that, but I agree with Joe that there is a spirit of what this was intended, of the appearance of the buildings, to make these look like. It wasn't intended to look like a Walmart. And so we're looking at the spirit of what's there and what's best for these buildings versus just a more undescriptive text. I'd want to look at it myself.
And the writing actually says the roof of any building or accessory building shall not be flat. If you actually look at the so-called flat roof proposal, if you take into account all of the shingled space with the mansard roof, it is not flat, because the actual roof, because it's the mansard roof, starts like 6-8 feet lower than the top part. So depending on how you define flat roof, you could say this is not a flat roof.
You have to check legally if there's some loophole.
So, because the whole point of this section is on exterior material. The heading is exterior material, and it's about making buildings that look nice. And I think we have determined in this town that the mansard roof style is something we generally think looks nice, and the mansard roof is mostly flat in design. So I think that, you know, we could take a creative interpretation that it's not a flat roof, and would be a because I'm a little uneasy about approving something that we know is in contradiction with this covenant from the town's perspective. So as long as we have some reasoning or way of looking at it that we believe we're not violating the covenant, whether it's enforceable or not, I'm more comfortable with that. So, all right. Mr. Bond, your hand is still raised. I don't know if you.
I'm gonna lower it.
Okay.
Nope, that's it.
Mark, you have your hand raised. Let me unmute your phone. Okay. Mark?
Thank you. This brings me back to about a year or so ago, where it was like itching to say, don't do it this way. Hear us, understand. Always might just take a different road from you. The covenant has not been spoken through until now, till and about maybe the first couple months of the first year. Now it comes up. I'm saying, what I said last time at the design committee was, I like the first two floors, the business and the office on top. You can have the residence and greenery and all that stuff and understand it. But now you guys are going backwards a little bit because of the dust, and sorry about Mr. Ferris wearing a mask and for dust prevention, but most of the world's wearing a mask now for other reasons. So I'm going through everything on this and going to say you're holding back because it's going to be a change because of a covenant, which takes about a year in this and courts and a new zoning to change, because the convent's got to go hand in hand with zoning. So why even go through that? And I agree a little bit with Mr. Bond's reasoning, but I'm also agreeing that the board is going through, and then the attorney for the applicant, Attorney Barberi, is going through saying flat roof. Now, other than those things, there's got to be more than to just say than saying it's hold back because dust and a roof. And I just can't understand it to go forward to stop it like that. To get this far, and they've done all the hoops and loops and stuff like that to do the changes, and now they're right there with you. How it was 1 or 2 planning board meetings and a couple design committee meetings. You're right there. It just seems like you're going backwards because a person has a good opinion of it, but he also hasn't been there for the other meetings that you guys went through and felt all together to understand together. So I'm saying to Mr. Bond, if you were there the last 3 or 4 meetings and got input, okay. And I'm also going to go with the designer for them and to all the rest that's on this Zoom page. I have been there since day one when they broke ground. This is going towards the developer and Mr. Rodenheiser and the attorney, everybody that's on their side. And I've been wanting this since day one when you first got involved with the new site plan debate and discussion. Almost like a year and a half. So, and you have these little nicks and crannies that you just can't get over. You've had 3 meetings without the other inputs, and I'm been there to understand that the town may not like it, but they also look at 128, which is about, to me, like I said before, is the closest thing to this. We need economic stuff, mixed use, get over it, and get through this and do it. People said things before, should have been here 2 or 3 meetings ago to bring it fresher, but now, just build it, get ready, and understand that economic and national needs this. It's not just a town understanding that one person cannot stop it, but it's what's going to be down the road, especially when the town manager's got a whole meeting, an economic meeting coming up next week. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bond, your hand is raised again. You're also muted.
Mute me. Mute me.
Oh, and Mr. Bond, do you have some? Okay, your hand's back down. Okay. Does anybody else have additional comment on this at this time? I think we're about done for tonight on this. My perspective as to where we stand now is I think we're getting close. Tricia has suggested raising the first floor of building 1 slightly so that you could put those signs hanging down from the eave underneath, which I agree makes it look better. It does add a little bit to the building height. Nobody.
I also said that roof pitch can be changed. I'm not meaning to add to to provide any perfect architectural solutions by making some suggestions. So
Yeah.
I just wanna be clear.
Thank you. I think there was some suggestion that they could raise the building a foot or two higher to make some of the fit in better. Make the gables not look quite so fake on the top. I don't know. The one question is if they want to make the building look slightly taller to accomplish those things, at what point is it become too tall? Let's see, what is the?
I mean, I think building one is measured out at 33 or 34 feet, and my recollection from previous discussions is that's approximately the height of the storage building, right, Preston? Just
Yeah,
leaving
it's
aside
about
grade differences, right?
Yeah, my point is if we give them a number to work with.
The architectural feature, I think, the storage building is up to 36 or 37 feet. So do we want to say as long as we keep it 35 or below, we're good? And we'll try to work all those comments.
I'm good with that. What does the rest of the board think?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the number to shoot for.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Okay, so you go up to 35 feet, not counting the mechanicals and the railing on the back, and make it look as good as you can.
I think Trish's point about some of the detail and working the details and looking at other examples of gambles and how can you accomplish some of the essence of what Trish is trying to get at, right, Preston?
Yeah, if we can get some of those examples as soon as possible, because we're hoping that we can be at your next meeting with finalized plans that we can all finalize and move on, as you know, before your elections.
The first thing I would just recommend is doing Google Mansard Roof and hit on images, and you'll have about 1,000 of them. So it's not rocket. It's not like it's unavailable information. So there's not a perfect solution. There's not a perfect detail that I'm trying to point out here. I'm trying to point out the things that are the next level of design problem that needs to be looked at that hasn't been looked at yet. I got my other screen opened. I Googled Mansard Roof and I'm just cruising through it.
Somebody could forward that page, we can take a look.
You don't need to forward, just Google Mansard Roof. Okay. Just go to google.com. That's what it's for. So.
So your next meeting is?
That would be June.
And we'll be talking to Peter about, issues and conditions and finalization of plans and whatever.
Yeah, that would be June 11th.
That's your next meeting? Okay.
You're going to lose your thinking.
And
it's going to be structurally expensive to do it.
Someone is not muted, and we're getting a lot of background conversation.
And I would think if we can work on any conditions we would want for this, that would be good. As far as just general conditions on the plans, I'm not seeing anything obvious to throw out there. I would take the 5 homer condition on solar and throw it on here as well, making it clear that if they want to add solar that's not visible from the ground in the future, they're welcome to do so. But we should have some very strict conditions based on our experience at this site for the construction period.
I mean, I think Preston also, I think by the next hearing, I think I mean, I'd like to hear that the dust situation is under control and being managed on a daily basis as a prerequisite for any further discussion on this topic.
I think that's reasonable. I would also point out that, you know, their goal is to get this done before the election so that we still have the same board makeup. That would mean the next meeting is the last meeting that, last regularly scheduled meeting, I should say, that I would be a member of this board. We could have an extra meeting after this on say Thursday the 18th, if it looks like we would be able to finish this on that date. I'm just throwing this out there for now, so that we can consider that if we need to. I would only do that if we really think that that would make the difference between whether or not we can finish this while I'm still on the board or not.
Right.
And we can decide that at our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if people have things they're thinking about in the nature of the decision, maybe you can forward those to Peter and we can work with him on that to try to finalize everything as soon as we can. Certainly from the viewpoint of the site, the sooner that somebody is out there on a full-time basis, I think the better off everybody is.
All right. Do we have anything else on the 11th at this time, Peter?
No, we don't, Preston. We don't have anything on the 11th. Do we, Emma? Oh, yes, we do.
There's Whittemore subdivision modification.
So we have a subdivision modification that was submitted, and that's what I'll brief the board on after we get all through our agenda items. But this will be our second item. This would be our second item on the agenda.
Is that expected to be something that's going to take a lot of time?
I hopefully I would say it should not, but you never know.
Okay, so is this is it a small modification where we'd do it all in one night, or is it something that's going to continue?
It may get continued, depending upon the circumstances and what in the butters. However, I think it would be I think it's an appropriate. Hopefully we could. It would take about a half hour, I would say.
Okay, so we should put this on for 7:45 then.
Okay.
All right. Is there a motion to continue this public hearing till 7:45 on the second Thursday of June, which is June 11th, 2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was moved by Dale and seconded by Phil. We'll take a roll call vote.
Bill Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Bill Williams, aye.
Joe Ruberton, aye.
Preston Crow, aye. That's 5-0. That passes, and we will see you at 7:45 on June 11th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Going back to the agenda, we have we do have a continued public hearing on a zoning amendment that was on changing animal kennel to animal clinic. I think that'll be fast to take care of, but let's skip
Preston,
that for the moment and go to 128 Main. Would that be the right thing?
That's the right thing. Yeah, we have a lot of people waiting for that one.
Yeah, let's go to 128 Main.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter, would you like to introduce why this is in front of the board tonight?
Sure. So at the last planning board meeting, a few of the members brought to my attention that as the development of 128 Main has gone up, that what the planning board approved from an architectural standpoint regarding the renderings is not is not the building that is being built today on the street. And so with that, I was able to reach out and get Carlos Hanzi, who's on the call tonight. And I talked to him about the concerns of the planning board. In doing so, I also had a meeting yesterday with Phil Jack, attorney Phil Jack, who's represented on the phone call tonight, who I assume is going to be representing Carlos. And we talked through the situation, and that is that as you drive by what is being built today at 128 Main Street, there's large gray blocks or squares that are present on the front facade and on the side facade facing Sunday Fair Bank. I would say those are the two sides that are high of highest visibility. And so in doing so and following up, I sent over to Phil and to Carlos the approved decision of the planning board, along with the approved renderings and the color rendering, which goes back to September 11th, which was approved by this board. And so I had a meeting with Carlos and Phil, and they're here tonight to talk about their opinion of what has happened. However, as I stated today, I would say I know it was the concerns of the planning board that what was, I would say, approved by the board is not represented within the building today. And so at that point, I'll hand it over to Phil and to Carlos to talk about it. Unless you, Preston, have any input.
I have one thing to say first.
Sure.
I actually was looking at the building today, and on the construction fence on the front, there is a picture of what they were intending to build, apparently, that I believe is the same rendering that the planning board approved back in September. So if anybody from the public is wondering what exactly we're talking about, if you are on Main Street, there's a very large picture of the building on the construction fence, and it doesn't look exactly like the building that's being built. And that is the essence of what we're discussing now. And with that, I will turn it over to Phil Jack or whoever else from the developer who wants to speak on this.
Thanks, Preston. Phil Jack here for the applicant. Hi, everybody. We've also got the architectural team on the call as well. We did have a good meeting with Peter yesterday, and it seems like there was a misunderstanding a bit on who had the final sign off on the color scheme for the building. Carlos had thought it was Michael Herbert that in our last meeting.
Oh, Jack, you've frozen up.
And so Carlos and his team said, "You want to?"
You got to start again, Phil. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can now. We didn't hear anything though, Phil. Got to start again.
Okay. Well, you probably didn't miss much. Anyway, so did you hear anything about our meeting yesterday with Peter?
No.
Okay. So yeah, we did have a good meeting with Peter, and it became apparent to me quickly that there was a miscommunication. We had thought at the last meeting where you guys approved the project that Michael Herbert, town manager, had been designated as the person who's going to sign off on the final color scheme. And so as part of that process, Carlos sent a number of renderings to Michael eventually, and he got back approving the yellow color that you see on most of the Hardy plank. I think after talking to Peter, what happened is Michael actually talked it over with Dale, at least Dale, maybe all the members of the board, and it was consensus on that color. But from Carlos's perspective, he was really primarily dealing with Michael, got the approval back from Michael, and so that's who he thought his contact was. He approached him about the paneling as well, and eventually he asked for meetings with Michael, but we understand Michael's very busy, he wasn't able to make an on-site meeting. Eventually got back to Carlos and said, yeah, essentially looks good. And so Carlos took that as a sign off. Obviously he wasn't trying to hide anything. It's right across from Town Hall. You guys see it every single day, I'm sure. And Carlos thought he was making the building more aesthetically pleasing. So here we are. We're willing to listen to your feedback, but I just wanted to give you some flavor on how that process happened. Could you hear any of that?
Yes, we heard all of that this time.
Okay, good. So I'll turn it back over to you, Preston. I mean, we're essentially we're here for your input.
Yeah, my understanding from the planning board is that you would work with the town manager to get a different color that the town manager liked, because he didn't like the bluish gray color scheme, and you came up with the color scheme that you're building. And when that was presented to us in October or September, we liked it. It was what the town manager wanted, and we were all good. There was no understanding that there would be further changes beyond that without going through the planning board.
Can we just clarify what the final, just because I wasn't on the planning board at that time, what the final rendering is? Does someone have that, the final approved?
Here it is. I'll put it up.
And does someone have a picture of it now?
Yep. There you go.
It's way different.
We approved a different coloring scheme from that, though. That's the coloring scheme that.
This was for clarity. If you on the town's website, the final rendering that was provided. This is the image. It's the very final dated rendering that we looked at in September. In that September when we approved this. And so the only piece that was outstanding for discussion as we approved this was the color.
Yep.
So
none of the trim, none of the decorations. It was just the color of the siding.
It was the color. That was it. That was what was going to be discussed and decided at some future date. And then there was a subsequent hearing to discuss the color that was ultimately selected, and we saw color swatches, and the board actually, I pressed in my recollection, is we took a vote based on that color selection.
We actually had a rendering, I believe. I had it in my file, and then it was emailed out again. It wasn't on the town website.
Okay.
But if you'll let me share my desktop for a second.
Sounds good.
There. That is, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is my understanding of what it was that we approved after the town manager was involved in recommending a different coloring scheme, and then it came back to the planning board for the planning board to sign off on.
And what does it look like now? What does it look like? We have a picture of it, what they built?
I do not have that photo. Let me unshare.
You have one, Joe, you said?
Joe, I think you said you had a photo?
Yep.
I have a photo too, Joe.
Okay, you want to put it up, Peter?
Yeah, what's the photo you yep. Sorry for the delay. One minute. Joe, I have to find it.
It's fine. I'll present it.
I have it open if you want me to share it, Peter.
You can open it. You can share it.
Here, I'm there.
Ah, no.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
That's
seeing the
plan.
old rendering of the building.
We need to.
We're not sharing the new photo.
Hang on a second. Can you see that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
That
that's
doesn't look
that's
anything.
a huge difference.
That's hideous.
I make no comment. I make no comment on what's there now. I would just say that what's there is not what was approved.
Not at all.
Both the paneling, as well as the awnings above the upper windows. I'm losing the right architectural term here, but
Well, the window covers too. All the window sashes are black. I'm seeing them as white, right?
That's right. That's correct. In the one that Preston just flashed up, the sashes were black.
Okay, I'm have the old one still up.
Yeah, I don't have that one. I didn't have the one that Preston had just presented, but
yep, I got it.
And also, not to mention the fact we had a big discussion about the 4 columns, and it looks like there's 5 in there. I don't know how that happened. Remember that?
Yes, there are more columns than were in the rendering. The roof line is a little different. You can see the black sort of fencing in the front. I don't know what railings on the rendering. There was white underneath it that made it look kind of like there was a deck there. And
they're hanging, they're floating.
Yeah, and the bottom one, that was it was right on top, basically right on top of where the overhang was, and now it's like a foot or two up, so it looks significantly different. Let me.
Yeah, there's no white casing around the windows as shown in the. They have black trim, but there's no white casing that's been eliminated. It seems like it's been value engineered out, all the decisions.
Yeah, so I'm sharing again so you can see again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that the roof is the roof is a light color instead of black.
Yeah.
Which is good environmentally as well. And you see it looks like you've got a little copper roof on the dormer windows up there.
Yep.
It's very significantly different.
And the trim under the railings, to your point, Preston, it's much, again, the building's not complete. So, but at the end of the day, the trim under the railing is a much nicer finish, richer finish than what's there in the photo that I just shared. So
it's like more like a balcony instead of just a railing floating.
Yeah. I mean, this project got a substantial variance in terms of parking to enable this to happen. We spent a year of time on this project. I am
disappointed.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say.
Well, it's not that what they're building is not what we approved. It's kind of.
Well, let's hear what happened. What's the reasoning besides this, Michael? Was there some implied approval of all of these changes, not just colors, but balcony or the railing types, the number of columns, the casing, the roofing? This was all part of that discussion. How did this happen?
Yeah, I can't speak to all of that, so I'll let some of the other team members. But for instance, on the metal roofing, that was more of a supply chain issue. And the architects, I think, can talk to that as well. But we weren't able to secure the metal roofing due to, a lot of that comes from China. And once COVID kicked in, we just couldn't get it.
Sorry, Phil.
It could be a temporary roof until you get the real thing.
Yeah, just wait. Put tie back up there.
I'm sorry, you couldn't hear me?
No, we could hear you. It's just That's crazy, Phil.
That's what I'm told, and I talked to, well, yeah, do you want to jump in on the supply side stuff?
Yeah, sure. I mean, with COVID, we've seen all sorts of things on all of our products with regards to supply chain issues and materiality. So as far as calling that baloney, I don't think that's fair. But as far as what you guys are building, you know, that's another issue.
Yeah, I definitely think there can be supply issues, but any kind of temporary roof could be put on there until the right product's available or until it was approved otherwise by the planning board.
Yep.
It's structurally, it's not even the same eave. I mean, it literally is connected on 3 sides in this drawing, and it is connected in 1 dimension on the current building as built.
And the angles on the rest of the roof are different too.
Yeah.
Like,
go back to the photo of the building that's up there.
Yeah, 1 second. I have to do this.
Yeah, that would not have been approved.
Yeah.
You know, they're like just little overhangs above those windows. It's like just a little pop out. It's not anything like. So what do we do? I mean,
I guess let's run through each item in order. I don't think, and Carlos, you can jump in. I don't think those are finalized yet. It doesn't look finished to me.
yeah, but the design of them. I mean, that the roof is up there. How are you going to make that into what the rendering has? You'd have to tear it down and rebuild it.
Yeah, like on the tower that's part that's closest to us in the rendering, the roof, the bottom foot or two flares out a little bit, and it's completely straight, and that, you know, that changes the feel significantly.
It's simply it's not what was approved. Like, this is this building on Main Street. We spent 12 months permitting this building.
I can guarantee you, if this was the rendering, it wouldn't have got approved that way.
Yeah, those panels, the black panels between the floors are just weird. There's nothing like that to compare this to. You've also lost around the windows. It was white around the windows, and you've lost that white trim around the black windows.
And then we had a whole night discussion back and forth over the 4 pillars or 5. I don't know how it got. There was 5 in the one drawing and 4 in another, and how they got an extra pillar in there on the first floor.
I guess I'll put that out to the team. Was that a structural issue?
I don't think so, because we discussed this. If it was a structural issue, they would have said we have to have that in there. Because
I think it's angle, I'm having trouble actually seeing what they're referring to. I apologize.
But you look at the picture that's up and you count, there's an extra, it looks like on the
second one in from this corner, the closest corner, the second one in.
Is
an extra.
You pull up the rendering again?
Sorry. The final rendering? Sure.
Yeah, you could. Or I don't know if someone
I
could
don't have that. I don't have that file.
side by side this thing and be a lot easier in general, but
it's a little quirky because we're switching who's sharing the screen between each.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, so I could be mistaken here, but I know when we sent this image, the last comment that sort of came with how that volume at the corner came down.
Correct.
And how we should add a column to balance out that what in the rendering looks to be like a floating volume. So I think ultimately it was decided to add the column there.
But it was decided by the board to not add that column. We specifically went over that whole issue, went back and forth, and we decided, we all agreed to not have that column in. So who decided to put it in? I mean, why are we even approving this if you're just going to build whatever you want? decided to put that in? It wasn't because we decided
I
not
believe
to.
we were told during the hearings that the columns were not structural, that they were aesthetic.
Yeah.
When I saw it being built, I believe I saw
most definitely
that they were being built with structural steel. So I think they have become structural in the building process. I could be wrong on that. I'm not an expert on that.
At all times, there had to be structure out there as far as where the structure was laid out in schematic design. When we're presenting to the board, obviously we can adjust things as needed. I have to back up Dan here. I have the same recollection, but of course I don't have any notes or anything to go back on. It was quite a year, as you guys remember, but I had it going both ways, and I thought at the end that you guys felt it was awkward, that it was a volume not supported and it didn't look correct.
There was discussions along those lines, and honestly, if the only issue here were the addition of a column,
yeah, different,
we wouldn't be here tonight.
Correct.
No. I think of all the things, I think that's being added to the list because there's a list.
Yep.
The roof's different, the color's different, the dormers are different, railings are different.
Yeah, and with those panels you put between the windows, there's no space for the signs that are in the rendering, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I don't know what the plan is there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of Carlos, who's here. He's going to have to speak up as well. But, you know, there's definitely some deviations, and I think there's some things that need to be remedied, obviously, to bring this back to whole. And I think, like you said, the overall composition as it's deviated so far as multiple different items, that's when the whole thing itself kind of just loses its continuity. So obviously I don't think anyone on the board wants them to rip down a roof or start completely over. That's just economically not feasible at this point. But I do think there's some ways to remedy the situation. You know, ideally on the front, the front at least, you know, these panels themselves, you know, Carlos, I hate to say this in front of him, make no mistake, we're not in love with the panels. That wasn't our design either. It was done thinking, Carlos was thinking he was beautifying it and doing something improvement using hardy plank, etc. So if we could, there's a picture of the rear of the building, and when I first pulled up, I saw that and I said, oh, you know, that's okay. That's a change. It's not what we were thinking. But what it is the panels are all white and it softens them quite a bit. I'd love to be able to pull that up and share it. And Dale, I see you shaking your head, but you kind of have to see a photo first before you do that. But thank you.
Hey, Dennis. Let's just be clear, Dennis. Okay. We approved a plan. Okay. We can talk architecture and you can tell us about what our opinion is about what needs to happen and all this stuff. But I'm not interested in that, Dennis. I want to hear you out, but if we want to shake our heads, we can shake our heads. Okay. Thanks.
I'm shaking my head because that final, and there was a big discussion on this about as long as it looks with the colors and everything, there was a big issue about as long as it looks like that rendering. And we said that. And so now it doesn't look anything like that rendering, and painting a bunch of those boxes white is not going to, you might have to pull those off and put siding on because you screwed up. You might have to re-roof it because the color is just, that black is we went over the roof color too with the black.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we shouldn't have to just accept it because
I never said that.
You guys can't, you know, it's not feasible, economically feasible. If that was the issue, it should have been done correctly in the first place.
Well, it might be important to note, like, who's on site every day making these kind of decisions. You know, who's on site, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it matters like where we are now, sending someone back to the drawing board and saying, show us a plan B now that we're in this completely messed up situation. Show us a plan B that gets us back to the goals of the original rendering, which, you know, after a discussion with Joe, you know what was going on at that time, because I wasn't here for that year, but it seemed like part of the issue was having it deal with a more historic looking building, something that, a calmer looking building having to do with the history of the town, not something very modern looking, which is kind of where it's heading now with the harsh blacks. That's what, so how do we get back to something modern looking? And someone better make another proposal. And if some of the stuff has to come off and get changed, then it does. So someone's going to have to look at that and make a really honest, genuine proposal about how this error on the part of the builder or whoever it is, whoever's involved in this project, and how it's going to be changed to meet the approval of the planning board.
Because I mean, like just looking at the dormer roofs on the dormers, it's completely different than what's up there.
A lot of the things that have come out are more complex things that are, obviously in terms of construction, it's harder to do that little swoop at the end than it is to do a straight roof. And so some of those things came out, I assume, because of cost. Or maybe, I don't know, if the contractors on site the builders on site just didn't pay attention and they built what was easy. But whatever the case is, this is what we paid for, basically, and we have to understand how the planning board and Ashland as a town gets our money's worth. And that's up to the 128 team there to figure that out, how they make amends.
So we can definitely prepare some different renderings. I would like you to take a look, and I think Dennis was trying to pull up the picture of the rear when those panels are white, and have a discussion about whether, the facade is more, is almost exactly what was approved, and the sides are slightly different with the white paneling. I agree.
Yeah, I think the front needs to be addressed and it needs to look just like the rendering. And I think that's achievable, but it's going to have to pull off the panels and redo the siding in those areas. And
I think the
obviously
needs to look like
railing. Sorry?
I think the whole building should look like it's supposed to. I mean, you're going to see the sides too. It's not going to be hidden. I mean, there's a tree there, but you go around the side, you're going to see all that.
I guess what we're asking is just to keep an open mind for a little bit. Let's send you some renderings. Carlos certainly wasn't trying to slip anything by anybody. I mean, it's right in the middle of town, So he thought he was making the building more aesthetically pleasing. We're hearing from you that you don't agree, and so we'd like to address that. But we're just asking you to keep an open mind. Let's send you some renderings, and we can reconvene next meeting and see what you guys think.
Well,
I think that's a reasonable approach.
I think dormers too, other than just the panels, you need to address a lot of things on there and make sure, because we don't want to come back and say, oh, look, we got rid of the panels, we changed that. Those dormers that are up there now don't look anything like this.
No, agreed, particularly on the facade of the building. So I think and I don't want to speak for Dennis and his team, but we'll try to have the front look like it should, in the original renderings. And we'll give you, both sides in the rear renderings as well. And then we can talk about it. That seems reasonable.
I think that's a reasonable next step, that we can at least see what you're proposing to fix and have discussions over, what is left and whether that's acceptable or what can be done for other mitigation to in light of that.
Can I ask one question on the extra pole? Is it the opinion of the board that should definitely come out?
I mean, I think we should just see the next set of drawings or whatever you're going to provide us to show mitigation. I mean, I don't know.
I remember we went over it and we liked the 4. So if you can do it, I would say. If you can't, then we're just stuck with it. But
I remember there was some disagreement, and I could go either way on it. So
that's not the huge issue for me either. I remember we wanted to not have it so crowded in there because of the sidewalk and all that stuff, but that's not a game, a do or done deal. But if it's not structural or whatever, that's not a. But there's just so much on there that it's like a completely different building almost.
So primarily, I'm hearing the paneling and then the metal roofs.
I don't think Phil. I don't think the boards are like. I mean, like there was an approved plan. We've raised the issues we've raised. I'm not sure where the board needs to come up with a punch list here.
Yeah, I mean, I have a list of so far 6 different things. The flare on the roof is gone. There is a different color of roof shingles. There are different roofs on the dormers. The white casing on the windows is missing. There's an extra an extra column.
The panels?
And the railing is different.
And the panels.
Yeah, right. And the panels were added. So there's 7. There's a list of 7 things, and maybe the column is the least important of all of those. But the other 6 have to be looked at and addressed and talked about, at least in the next discussion.
As well as seeing the both sides rendering, because the other side we don't know. Aren't there some patios up there or some railings on the parking side and I mean, we're just looking at the front. That's what we came up with. I'd like to see the whole building.
Sure.
I mean, I'll drive down there and look at it.
I mean, if I'm able to your screen, or I can.
I would also say the color in the rendering looks a little different from the color that's being built. I don't know if it changed or if it's just the difference between reality and renderings. If you could check on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, the beige color is definitely different in reality versus the same sample we showed the Hardy plank and their stock finishes.
And you're saying that the difference in color is that you are using the same material that was presented?
Correct.
Yeah, it also could be the way it's printed, the screen you're looking at, they all look different.
Yeah. I know the coloring in renderings is often not 100% accurate, so I just wanted to double check.
Yep, and they're pre-finished in the factory, so we can change it anyway.
And if it varies a little, that can still look good. It's not. That's not it.
It's not. Yeah, it's not that. It's the panels and such.
Okay.
I do have the side and the rear. If you want to see those, I tried to share, but it's not letting me share. So I don't know if someone else can or.
Oh, can someone make Dennis a co-host?
If you want to see it.
I can do that. You should be all set, Dennis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the rear, kind of looking from the banking parking lot. So as you can see, the only reason why I was trying to show you this piece was just these panels, for whatever reason, are white. They were a little less jarring to me as far as they soften a bit.
But there's still lines. It makes the building look like a bunch of vertical lines.
Yeah, and again, you can see the roof lines there on the dormers is just kind of an awning effect as opposed to a more traditional mansard roof effect that you would get with a dormer.
Mm-hmm. And we obviously can see that whole side of the building from the road there by the bank. I mean, it's not like that's going to disappear or go away. That's a big side of the building.
Okay, when's your next meeting?
Thursday the 11th, the second Thursday of June.
What from a ongoing work perspective, Peter? What's your what are the feelings on this in terms of does work continue on this site, or what's the standard practice? Obviously, that's in the building inspector's department, but
well, I think the number one thing is I think looking at what's going on and visiting the site. Most of the work is interior, which is going on right now. I think we could let the interior work continue. Carlos, I will say, has been very good in complying with our COVID-19 daily certificate compliance. So I do want to note that and thank Carlos for that. However, I think we can halt all items for out on the outside of the building, on the exterior of the building, until we come back and we have a couple, a new plan to move forward. Obviously, I think that's most appropriate action, to let Dennis and Phil and Carlos and their team take a look at the items and the list that we kind of presented. I also have circulated the building permit plans that were submitted and what the building permit was filed in relationship with. So we do have that also to fall back on and to take a look at. So with that said, I think we can continue to let the interior work move forward, and that wouldn't kind of put a halt on the project. And that will give us and give Carlos some time to take a look at the exterior.
And I don't think we're not trying to bankrupt you or stop your work or do that. But if the building had been built the way we approved it, we wouldn't be here. So show us what you plan, propose, and we'll look at it. But it really needs to get as close to that as possible.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, so at this point, I think it makes sense to continue this matter and just I'll continue to work with and communicate with 128 Main's team, but I would fully suspect that this will be on the next planning board agenda on the 11th.
Okay. This is not a
public hearing. This is an agenda item. We are not reopening the public hearing. This was just an agenda item.
And I don't want to take, we're running late tonight. I don't want to take public comment on this, but if anybody from the public has comment on this, you can send it in writing, and we will have that for all the members at our next meeting if somebody wants to submit anything in writing. But we're not going to take time for public comment on this tonight. It is quite late. In fact, it is 10:30. Probably ought to make sure the doors are still unlocked.
Mine is.
All right, so this will be on our agenda again on the 11th. Because it's not a formal hearing or public discussion, no motion is required for continuing this. But we will then move on. We have a public hearing continued from the April 23rd meeting on zoning, section 10. This was the planning board will hold a public hearing to see if the town will vote to amend chapter 282 zoning, section 3 of the Ashland zoning bylaws. This was section 10.0 definitions to change animal kennel to animal clinic or hospital. And when we looked at this before, the conclusion that we seemed to get as a board was that this really requires a lot of other changes throughout our zoning to really fully address the issue of animal kennels versus animal clinics, and it's simply a change in the definition while it tries to address a redundancy within the zoning, may actually make things more confusing as opposed to less confusing. I think that's where we left it off at the last hearing on this. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so Preston, I'll take this one from here. So at the last hearing, if everyone remembers the last planning board meeting, we did have that little agenda issue where and that's why we had to have that meeting. I believe that follow-up Tuesday meeting with 81 West Union Street. So therefore, this was placed on the agenda tonight to, I would say, for administrative matter for the board to go public hearing on this. With COVID-19 and town meeting coming up, I think it's appropriate to move this item until the fall town meeting. With that said, it's going to give us a little bit more time to kind of unpack the definition of the clinics versus animal hospitals, and we're going to have to re-notify this over the summer, leading up to fall town meeting anyway, regarding kind of the Attorney General and how bylaws are created and actually put forth. And so tonight, from an administrative standpoint, I would just ask the planning board to close this public meeting and state that we will take this up at a further time.
All right. It is a public hearing, so I do have to open it up for public to comment before we close it. I don't see any public comment, which is good because I think we all understand what's going on with this. Is there a motion to close the public hearing from somebody who's not muted?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, that was moved by Tricia and seconded by Dale. We'll do a roll call vote.
Buchanan.
Oh.
Getting late.
Let's start over on the roll call.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Bill Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Preston Crowe, aye. That passes 5-0. And I believe normally when we close a public hearing on a zoning article, we then have a motion for how we are dispensing with the article. And I believe the motion would be that this article is not ready for town meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? That was made by Dale and seconded by Tricia. Roll call.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Bill Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Preston Crowe, aye. That passes 5-0. So I believe that closes this matter out. And if we come back in the fall with a more comprehensive look at the issues, because anytime you start touching a definition, you then need to look at the use table related to that definition, what all the impacts are, and we can do it right. All right, we also have a discussion on the Metro West Regional Collaborative Board representation. I asked for this to be put on the agenda. It's getting late, so we can continue. We can just put this on the agenda for next time. Hopefully we'll be running not quite so late. Discussion of downtown zoning grant.
So that's a project that's going on, and the town received a fairly large grant about a year ago, and we're using that. So the town is working with MAPC to look at the downtown zoning. There's a survey that MAPC put together. We're going to actually be putting that on Urbanize fairly shortly. And I will be circulating some more documentation surrounding their review of the downtown zoning. But in short, that's we're working with the MAPC on using grant funding to review the zoning in the downtown, and there's more to come.
Okay. And we also have 2 sets of minutes. I think we probably are coming up on when we're supposed to be having these approved. The April 9th minutes, we received these by email, so hopefully people have had a chance to take a look at them. If there's no comment, should we approve the minutes of April 9th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that was moved by Dale and seconded by Phil, I believe. Roll call.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Phil Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Preston Crowe, aye. The minutes of April 9th are approved as written unanimously. We also have the minutes of April 23rd. There's the zoning thing that we just handled. The article that we've held the zoning hearing on correcting the reference for the design review committee, that I believe should go forward for fall town meeting. The planning board did complete the hearing and make its recommendation. So the fact that it's being postponed doesn't necessarily, we've still done our process. So I don't know that there's a need for to redo the public hearing on that.
We're gonna have to redo the public hearing on that.
Oh, we will?
Yeah.
Even though we did complete it and voted a
The planning
recommendation?
board has to hold a public hearing within 60 days of town meeting.
Oh, within 60 days. Yeah. I did not know that. That's unfortunate. But clearly that one's ready for town meeting. So.
Yeah. Nope, it's ready. It's good, but we do have to re-advertise and re-hold the public hearing. So that one should be easy one.
Okay.
Yep.
Unless there's any other comment, is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd, 2020 as written?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was moved by Dale and seconded by Trisha. Is roll call vote?
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Phil Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
And Preston Crowe, aye. Those minutes are now approved 5-0. All right. Unless there are any other board reports or administrative matters, Peter, is there anything else?
No, I'm all set. I think as things move forward, I'll reach out to all the board members as so. I'll be back in town hall at least 2 days a week next week. So if you do want to meet me or have a cup of coffee or visit one of these sites, please feel free and let me know.
All right. Unless somebody else has something, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at
10:42
10:42
p.m. So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Dale Buchanan, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye.
Phil Williams, aye.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
And Preston Crowe, aye. We are now adjourned. Thank you and good night.
Have a great night.